A small mountain settlement was located among bizarre rocks. A thick forest grew close to it. One night at the time of the full moon, when people calmly rested, something unusual happened. At midnight, there was a terrible howl of a monster that came from the forest. The whole village woke up. The men went out into the street, illuminating their path with torches. All were scared by a black monster with red eyes. Suddenly, a meteorite appeared in the sky. He approached the ground at a great speed. It was a huge fireball. All men looked at the sky. Some of them shouted what kind of miracle it was. The fiery sphere hit the ground right where the monster was. An explosion occurred. The earth caught fire around. The monster lifted the monster and threw it to the side. He was scared and ran into the forest. When the fire was averse in the place where the explosion was, all the people saw a naked young man with long black hair. He covered his male organs with his hands. Rural residents thanked God for salvation. All the men who were there were surprised by the appearance of a young man. The guy himself was no less surprised by what was happening than them. He thought that for strange people, some kind of incomprehensible place where to be. The young man saw poor rural residents in bad clothes, which meant backward technologies. He thought that the first appearance after the transition was not the best, but the flight was pleasant. The boy examined everything around and thought that now he was not at all ashamed, although he was naked, and it should be ashamed of him since they looked very poor, unhappy and retired. Our hero told the men that he is in order and his appearance is as part of the performance. He was still without clothes, covering his nakedness with his hands. After some time, hospitable owners gave him shelter and clothes. Men drank sake, clinking and glorifying the hero. People drank for the health of the young man who today saved them from the black monster. The boy also sat among them with a cup of sake. He was still thinking how he got here. All signs indicated that he made the transition. In his last life, his name was Su Tsin Yao. The guy was a student with a high IQ, a young genius in the development of artificial intelligence. It can be called a nugget since no one invested money in it. He just had talent. To prove himself, the young man was engaged in research day and night, wrote programs, and hoped that he would make a breakthrough. He scored to eat and even drink water. However, on the eve of success from overwork, the student suddenly died. This happened when he studied at night, lying on the keyboard. Then there was some kind of flight and an explosion that did not harm him, and the guy was in the village. His landing was frightened by the monster, but the inhabitants realized that God sent them to the aid of the hero. After dinner, the young man left the living room, not knowing what to do next. He wanted to be left alone to think about what happened calmly. Suddenly, the boy heard someone's voice, who invited the guest to relax, because the victory over the monster was tired of him, and now the safety of the village depends only on him. Still, in these few minutes, when the guy was left alone, after a small analysis of the situation, he opened two ways out of the situation. The first is to pretend to be a hero, fight a monster, and imitate death from a poisonous bite. The second way out is to find a local gang here and pretend that he was scored to death. The young man thought these were two risky options. To avoid trouble, he had to escape from the village before people will reveal his personality. The young guy went into the bedroom, lay down on the bed without undressing and not even output. He thought that he still wanted at least a few days to enjoy the privileges of the hero. When he spread his hands on the bed, he felt some body with his right hand. It was a girlfriend, or rather her chest. He, as scalded, jumped out of bed with a cry. What kind of joke it was. There was a girl with long dark hair. She was undressed, but covered with a blanket. She said that the guy is the hope of the whole village and wants to serve him all night if he wants it. The young man looked at the girl. He did not expect that in the village they were so passionate about heroes, so the feudal society has something to learn. The guy calmly approached and held out his hand to her shoulder. He, putting his hand on his shoulder, said that she would give him time to wash. After these words, the guy opened the door, turned around again, and looked at the girl. Already at the door, he told her to wait for him for a couple of minutes. As soon as he closed the door, in front of him, on one knee, there were 3 young men. They greeted him and told him to wait for them. The young man joked that this is a support group. With the 3 young men there was an elder. He said that they were afraid so that no difficulties arose. An elderly man shouted at the guys that they had something to learn from the guest. Then the elder said that now they do not dare to detain him and let him go to rest. He showed a gesture to the room with which the young man came out. Our hero cheerfully said that everyone disperses and be surprised by the assumption of the old man what problems he may have. The hero showed that everyone left. The elder left after all. When the young man returned to the bedroom, only a blanket was lying on the bed. There was no girl. The guy thought that taking a bath before making love is not such a good habit. In the middle of the room stood a round table and chair. The boy came up and sat down at the table on which the candle was burning. He brought his hands to the fire and noticed the ring on his hand. The young man thought where he came from. The ring was with a large green stone. The young man decided to take it off to look closer. Our hero brought him closer to his eyes and looked inside the stone. There was something there. He thought that this ring was the only thing that was on him when he was reborn, but it was not from his past life. There was a jade pendant inside the ring. He shone with a beautiful green brilliance and played in the light of a candle. As a student with high intelligence and a comic book lover, he knew to activate such little things, a drop of blood needed. Therefore, he bit his finger and received, so necessary for him, a drop of blood. A drop of scarlet blood from the finger hit the pendant, which the guy took out of the ring. She flowed down the jade coulon down. The young man thought why nothing was happening. Maybe this is because there is too little blood, or it just does not work. Then the guy hurt all his fingers, and the blood sprinkled from them with a stream. He was so painful that a tear drove from his eye. Suddenly, the jade pendant was activated. It turns out that the stone was not opened by blood, but to tears. The young man was on the surface of the lake. The water was calm. The sky was almost the same color as water. It was reflected in water. The view was very beautiful, but the shores of the lake were not visible. The guy, as a computer genius, did not surprise the virtual space, but whether it was so safe. He thought that he would not surprise him anymore, but it was an exciting sight. Our hero turned around as if feeling the approach of a miracle. It was a beautiful girl who walked on the surface of the water. There was a light green aura around her. Her clothes were light. The guy had many questions: who she is, what her name is, how old she is, and what is her zodiac sign. He also wanted to know what she was thinking about him. The guy said his name is Su Tsin Yu. He is not married. But all these questions remained unanswered since something happened, and suddenly the water, which until then held it on its surface, parted. The waves rose and the wind swirled the whirlwind around. The young man was underwater. Moreover, he began to sink, going down more and more to the depths. He couldn't breathe. There was not enough oxygen. He closed his mouth with his hand. Suddenly, the young man saw a beautiful stranger who followed him to the depths. She approached closer and closer, although together they plunged into the sea abyss, farther from the surface of the water. When the beauty approached very close, she kissed him to give him oxygen, and then whispered to the guy's ear, something about the contract of soul, life, and death. The two of Su Tsin Yao and the stranger spun in a kiss in the water. She also said that after the conclusion of the contract, he never betrayed her. All reality has acquired a reddish tint. The sky and water turned into the color of the sunset. The soul agreement was signed, and the young man could now be free. The guy stood and watched the stranger turn from him and wants to leave. He said that somehow, quickly, they concluded this contract. The young man suggested repeating, but the girl turned around and said that after signing the contract, the next stage is its completion. She later added that according to the concluded contract, he must find what she needs. The beauty said that it was time to find out to him what she needed. The guy sat down on the sand. The girl stood nearby and said that he helped her restore her memory. A guy who has a high level of intelligence began to be clever and said that they only discuss the duties of the parties, and she acts in violation of a contract law demanding the impossible. From these smart speeches, the girl was completely confused. Her face became sad. She asked what it was such a contractual right. The young man realized that he was too demanding of a stranger. The guy noticed how alarmed she was. He decided to start asking a simple question. What is her name? Her eyes sparkled and seemed to be a moment, and the beauty would cry. The girl said that she could not remember her name. Then the guy said, "If she does not remember, then he himself will choose her name." The stranger agreed. She stood nearby, and the young man thought everything was a worthy name, for such a beauty that looks like a fairy and pure, like ice. The young man thought that this name should combine romance, poetry, and deep meaning. The guy closed his eyes and said that he decided to call her Dunmay. The girl said that she would now be good, Dunmay, like a flower of winter plums, lonely in the snow. She was so light and airy and stood on the surface of the water, which had a pink tint of sunset. Suddenly, everything disappeared. The guy opened his eyes. He was in the bedroom on the floor near the table. He said the female name twice, Dunmay, but no one responded to him. The young man rubbed his eyes, and I realized that there was only a dream that he had a dream. He looked around again. Suddenly, our hero saw a book on it stood a jade pendant on top. The young man thought where this book came from because he had not seen it before. Its name was Technique of Star Martial Arts. When the young man opened the book, there was an inscription on her first page. She said that according to their contract, the girl would help to practice this technique. Signed, Dunmay. The guy was delighted that still the meeting with the girl was in reality. Our hero began to flip through the book and consider drawings. Martial art techniques were depicted there. All the necessary stages for cultivation were described there. This is hardening the body, strengthening of bones, flesh, and tendons. There was also information about the spiritual energy of a person and the rebirth of the soul. At this time, in one of the houses of the village, the conversation of two men was heard in the late night. The first man asked his brother Chow if he was sure about the election of the village. The second said that if only he had someone who could help, he would certainly become the headman. Men sat at the table and drank tea from white cups. The first man was insightful and asked if he had a Tsinyu hero. Of course, it would not be bad to enlist such support. The morning came the third day after our hero met a stranger. All this time he was in a small house, which stood on the edge of the village. The snow peak of the mountain towered high above the village. These 3 days were not in vain. All this time the young man spent in intensive training. He practiced star equipment. This technique contains a large number of spiritual and star essence, which can be absorbed to become a full-fledged immortal practice. Not only the body, but also the face. The young man from time to time took a mirror and peered into his facial features. From practice, the person should have become more attractive. But while the changes were not visible, the boy was upset due to the fact that there are no changes on his face. The young man thought that maybe he was deceived or should work more diligent. The guy put on a jade pendant on a black lace on his neck, and immediately Dunmay appeared. She entered the room and everything was illuminated by heavenly light. Su Tsin Yao looked at the girl and thought that only a few days had passed, and the sister seemed to be even more beautiful. The girl came very close to the young man and took him with her hands on her cheeks. He looked at her without taking his eyes off. She joked that he was letting in saliva. The boy replied that he was just hungry and asked why she appeared. Dunmay said she suddenly felt a special aura. The beauty said that she feels somewhere nearby to be treasure, which exudes this aura. The girl thought, trying to remember the past, it seemed to her that this was connected with her memory. The girl suggested that it was necessary to come closer to understand everything. The boy said that the village is not large, and he could examine everything at night. The beauty said that she was glad because she was not mistaken in him. She looked at the young man carefully and disappeared as quickly as she appeared. The sun rose very high and became very hot. The young man became very stuffy. He thought how to cool him. The boy was in the room. He looked around and saw the logs of firewood. He thought that fans and air conditioners have not yet come up with, so we need to come up with something simple that would help cool. The young man took firewood and made thin cane from the logs, then found paper and nails. With his own hands, he made himself a device for convenience. The young man thought that man himself a blacksmith of his happiness and comfort. He made a fan, on which later he made a beautiful drawing of flowers and herbs. Then he decided to do a few more. The boy was pleased with herself. It turned out not at all bad, as for the first time. The most important thing is that it delivered coolness and comfort. Suddenly, he heard someone a covenant of his outside. Su Yao opened the door and saw a lot of gifts in front of the entrance, among which there were medicinal herbs, large mushrooms, eggs in the basket, sweets and other food. There were two men near the gifts. The young man asked in surprise what it all means. One of the men immediately ran up to the young man and said that he would help him become the head of the village. The old man began to bow and lament. The second man also ran to the guy and said that he came first, so the hero should help him become the head of the settlement. At the same time, he pushed another person's elbow and he fell. Two elderly men exchanged evil eyes and muttered something under their nose. Suddenly, one of them, who was older, said that he had a ginseng root for the hero. He held them in his hands a dozen. Another man who was full, bowing to the hero, said that he had given precious stones as a gift. They were just huge, beautiful gems, and there were a lot of them. The young man was very surprised at the gifts, among which there were such expensive gifts. He was especially interested in 2 eggs in the basket. He thought that he could not take them with him, but for now he would leave here. The young man thought he wanted to leave all the gifts, but how to help him men who want the same thing, to win the elections and become the elder of this village. Our hero scratched his head with his hand and said that he should think about it at least night. Older people said that he thought well. They bow in the end and wanted to leave. Suddenly, a good idea flickered in the hero in his head. The boy thought that he was not used to just taking gifts if he gives them a fan made by him. It will be a trifle, but it may be pleasant. The young man gave each of them a fan. The old people were surprised at such a gesture from the hero. He answered a gift for a gift. They looked at the fan and wondered how he made them with his own hands. The fan shone at his opening. The men did not think at all that such a gift was a trifle. The eldest man said that such a fan is worthy of heaven and not to find something like on earth. Another man experienced when he opened his tender trembling and a feeling of his lost youth when he fled at sunset along the seashore towards his first love. Both old men were satisfied with the gift. For some time they even forgot why they came here. The young man thought that at least before that they were frankly fitting, now they were sincerely. Our hero realized that the spiritual essence emanating from him was transferred to a fan that ceased to be an ordinary object and found a piece of magic. The guy nevertheless thought again. He returned with his thoughts to his past. He thought that the spiritual essence would become a source of his scientific knowledge and skills and increase his intelligence. The young man dreamed of creating a spiritual machine, an airplane, and even a spiritual spaceship. All this will become a reality if he receives a lot of spiritual power for a new era, scientific cultivation. The old man who has returned and interrupted the hero's dream, he asked what is called, "This is a treasure," pointing to the fan. The boy said that it does not bother him now. Su Yao nevertheless clicked his fingers and said that let there be your most ordinary fan. With such a smart look, he said this phrase that the old man did not even think that the name was a little long. An elderly man discovered a fan, and he lit up everything around his radiance. The hero realized that the elder was too highly appreciated by his work. Then the old man fell to his knees next to the young man, hugged his leg, and began to say that the hero wanted to refuse him, giving such a precious thing. Then the second old man came running, who watched them. He fell to his knees, crawled out and grabbed the kid by the other leg, begging his favor and wanting to give him even greater gifts. Su Yao began to strain this scene. He told the elderly that everything is in order and they could return home, and he will think about it for now. The guy thought that, poor fellow, they wanted the same from him. After some time, when the night was enveloped by the mountains, the young man and the girl stood on a large plateau, behind which there was a cliff. She said that the aura comes from that mountain that is opposite them, but how to get there? The guy said that he was prepared, and let her not worry. The boy made something like a turntable with wooden blades, which he attached to himself. It was a new creation of the hero, a sparkling ring, a helicopter working on spiritual energy. He scattered and jumped into the abyss. Mentally, the boy said that the creation would work and the blades spin. So the girl and the young man flew over a deep cliff. She soared like a fairy. Her hair and clothes developed in the wind. He flew with his device, whose blades quickly turned. Su Yao was a genius of technology, so he created this thing. But over time, he saw that he was declining. Probably the device had no sufficient power. The blades jammed. The girl suggested that he needed to practice, since he did not have enough spiritual power. He said why she had not said about it before. It's good that this happened when they were already close to the ground. This land was called Forbidden. The girl told the guy that it was this aura emanating from this place that she felt. The guy said what a forbidden zone it is if there is no guard. He saw some sign and joked that probably this sign should scare it. Suddenly, having passed 2 more steps, he fell into the zone of action of the field guarding the entrance. He shouted that this was a detection mechanism. The blue field activated something like the energy field of the wall. The figure of a guard with a fighting axe and in armor, suddenly arising from nowhere, had a blue glow. She had energy and blocked the path to the cave. Suddenly, the warrior moved, immediately without warning, struck the guest. The young man managed to jump. He saw how powerful an axe was on the ground in the place where he was recently. The mythical figure of the guard spoke. The warrior said that those who do not have printing are prohibited. The young man asked what was still for the seal. Suddenly, from the darkness, a man with a torch in his hand came to him. He said that the elder of the village is needed here. The stranger turned out to be a local resident. His name was John San. He recognized the young man and greeted the hero who before that saved the whole village from the black monster. Selyanin said that only the elder of the village is allowed to enter this forbidden place because only he has a seal. Immediately, the guy remembered the 2 elderly people that yesterday they came to him and strictly asked for him to help them become the headman of the village. It is not surprising that those 2 wanted to be the headman. The young man suggested John San that it was not time to change start in their villages. The guy suggested, because if he became the headman, he will be able to enter the forbidden zone. But the local resident shook his head. The rural guy said that if he is young, beautiful and considered a hero, this does not mean that everything is allowed to him. The peasant said that in order to become the headman, you need 500 signatures. As soon as the guys moved away from the entrance to the cave, the figure of the guard immediately disappeared. Our hero took Jansan by the shoulder and they went to the village together. Su Tsinyao thanked the guy for useful information. The hero decided exactly what this village should become. This post was very important for him, so he could help the beautiful girl Dunmei, who appears and disappears when she wants. On the way home, 2 young people walked through the edge of the forest on which they saw men sitting in a circle. All of them repeated the same phrase, "God forbidden land, restore my light." Our hero approached people sitting on a luminous circle in a lotus pose. They were all with their eyes closed and pronounced something like prayer. He asked them what they were doing. One of the people who was bald, without opening his eyes, said that they were the inhabitants of the village of Guanmin, in which, for unknown reasons, 100 people would blind. The man said that therefore people gather in the mountains every night and pray so that the divine power of forbidden land helps them return their light. Then our hero remembered that if people do not see anything at night, is this not chicken blindness? He thought about how to really help these people. The guy told himself that a simple superstition, they would not help them. Science needs here. These methods may be effective. After all, if a young man helped them, he will provide them with a great service and do a good job. And if then he wants to be the headman, then many people will vote for him out of gratitude. Su Tsinyao conceived something. He left the clearing in the mountains and quickly ran down. He thought that he would do what he planned and get a seal. The guy returned to the village, to his small house, and sat down at the table. He took the paper and brushes and began to draw. It was something like a scheme. Here, as always, unexpectedly, and when she wants it, a girl appeared. Like a fairy, she flew to him and asked what he was painting because she did not understand anything at all in the drawings. Somehow, our hero began to feel bad. It happened at night. Now, his right hand did not obey him and did not want to draw him. He grabbed his right hand with his left hand. The guy remembered that somewhere several times a night he was trembling and fatigued. The body does not obey him. Then everything passes. He said this to the girl. Dunmei suggested, maybe because of her. For some reason, she was delighted with this, although our hero was puzzled by these changes in his body. It is most likely that after concluding a contract between souls and their bodies, they began to be in symbiotic relations. His essence not only supported her, but also nourished. The couple was mentally nearby, but their bodies intertwined and touched one to another when she was next to him. Our hero thought that the more attractive the girl looks, the more dangerous she is. But Wyatt acted so that his energy decreased. He asked Dunmay why it works only in one direction. She said that he was the owner and should feed her. The guy thought he had concluded an unequal agreement that was not fair. Why he signed him? The guy thought the truth that they say. Sometimes love kills. The beauty said that only one method knows that will help him in this situation. This is more practice in the technique that she gave him. The guy realized that he would not be easily. Our hero realized that there was nothing more to wait. He sat in the lotus position and began to concentrate on the technique of star cultivation, a really real treasure. All night he trained and received not only replenishment of strength, but also a large amount of spiritual energy. He also thought to continue to communicate with Dunmay. He needs to have the highest level. The young man looked at the sleeping fairy and thought that sooner or later, its essence would exhaust him completely. So we must train. He went to the table, remembering that he needed to take the headman's post. The young man continued to create and created a tool of labor that facilitates work in the field. It was a mechanical thing. You can test it in the garden, among the beds of vegetables and backs. The girl asked him, appearing from nowhere, what it was. The young man said that this is a spiritual combine, his second creation, to work with him a mere trifle in the field. He easily processes carrots. The young man was a fan of technology. He thought that if you can solve the problem using technology, then you need to use it. The girl unsuccessfully joked that he was a rabbit. Why did he need so many carrots? He was surprised at her imperfection in the field of thinking. Of course, after all, such an idea could have occurred only to him, the boy said with a smart look, raising his index finger up, which, for the treatment of chicken of blindness, is the most important vitamin A, which is a lot of carrots. The young man threw root crops into a large wooden barrel and washed them. He said that a mixture of this vitamin with spiritual energy would give an excellent result. The young man conducted several purification of the medicine and received what he wanted in the form of a round pill, which glowed from the inside with some light glow. A lot of such pills were made to all the inhabitants of the village. The boy threw a bag of medicine on his shoulders and ran to the village of Guanmin. At this time, a man was heard in the main square of the village who said that only light was waiting ahead of the inhabitants. Many people came to listen to his advice. On a wooden scene, decorated with flashlights, was a man who wants to occupy the post of headman. He urged everyone to climb the mountains and hunt a demon svingnu, eat her liver and see. People said that for many years, so no one saw a demon svine. The man on the stage said that yesterday he discovered traces of the monster and say exactly where. People shouted that if this is true and lead to recovery, then they would support his candidacy for the elders of the village. The speaker began, putting his hands on his sides, and said that he was Zhao Xuanchen and tells all him that the demon hunt will cure all of them. He said so confidently about this that the inhabitants believed him. All people cried out joyfully that they would kill a pig. The man smiled, but thought to himself how easy it was to deceive these naive fools. Immediately, a dozen daredevils, along with Zhao Xuanchen, went to the mountains. The leader led them to the place where he allegedly saw the traces of the demon Svigny. They walked along the path near a mountain cliff. The man walked ahead and thought that when his assistant Zhao Si would raise a noise in the place where they agreed, he would go there alone and pretend that he was injured when he tried to catch a pig. The old man was pleased with himself because he thought that his plan would work and he would become an elder. He believed that the residents of Guanmin would be grateful to him for the salvation. But when Zhao Xuanchen reached the appointed place, he looked around. He did not hear the noise there. He thought, maybe the accomplice of Zhao Si fell asleep. Suddenly, his assistant shouts with screams that a demon Svin was running behind people. The young man had a frightened look, and he fled very quickly. Zhao Xuanchen realized what was happening. Something unusual, and not at all what they agreed with the assistant Zhao Si. The young man ran to them and said that everyone was running away. Because the demon is here. The hunters raised their weapons and shouted that the boss did not lie to them and the demon was running here. Now men said that everything depends on him, of the brave master, who would fight with the demon and win. The man told all the hunters that he was grateful, that the truth is the beast here nearby. Such a chance falls out once in his life, to show everyone his courage. The master lifted his weapon up. It was a small braid and said that everyone would stand here, and he would go alone and kill the demon. Suddenly, there was a loud noise of hooves on the ground, and all people saw a formidable black demon with red eyes and large fangs, which rushed right on people. The master's face distorted the expression of horror. He shouted that here is the truth, the demonvinity of the level of the kingdom of immortal. The old man grabbed his heart with his hand, but the view of the black monster was so threatening that after a moment, Zhao Xuanchen ran away, sparkling heels faster than young guys. Just our hero stood on the top of the hill and saw how Demon Winin, with his brood, small cubs, dispersed the people who came to hunt him. The young man thought it was better to get out of here faster, away from this formidable beast. There was a bag of pills on his shoulder. He said that there are so many creatures here, they can trample him. Suddenly, he stumbled on wet ground and his legs slipped down. The soil on the hill was wet and clay. He began to slide down, and as he did not try, he could not break his feet. After a moment, our hero was already standing in front of a Sphingna demon, literally a few meters. All hunters who did not have time to escape saw this. People began to shout that the hero came to save them. But Su Tsinyo had only thoughts about a quick flight. He reproached himself that he was not careful. He mentally asked his Dunmei, or he will have time to escape from a monster who has the level of the kingdom of immortal. The girl mentally told him that the guy would not have time to run away, since the level of the demon Sphini is higher than his. Despite the power of Kulon, that he has not to overcome the creature. The young man sorted out options. He thought about how such a large group of these creatures appeared here in broad daylight. A black, huge creature seemed as if frozen. It carefully looked at the guy who suddenly appeared in front of him. The young man noticed yellow eyes, muddy pupils, red and swollen limbs, black teeth in a pig. The guy found that this was a disease in which the beast was sensitive to the sound. The guy remembered Vera and his spiritual combine. He had a very bold idea. But will there be enough time to embody it? All hunters continued to scream so that the hero was careful and saved them from the demon Sphingni. They warned the young man that the beast was about to attack him. The black demon was 3 meters from the guy. His eyes sparkled evil, the fangs were enormous, the mouth was open, he was breathing heavily. Locals began to worry, as the young man seemed so small compared to a huge beast that he could easily trample him. Our hero applied the only method that he could come up with in this situation. He began to exude spirituality, publishing high vibrations with his mouth and voice. These waves reached the beast, creating him the strongest impulse in his head, which the creature could not withstand. The eyes of the demon Sphingni closed. He staggered. Blood poured from the animal from the mouth. The beast knocked over his feet up and died. The blow of his body on the ground was like an explosion and lifted a lot of dust and stones into the air. The young man did not believe his eyes. All other animals became very scared because their boss was stronger than them, but he was defeated. They were in danger and they soon fled. All hunters fell to their knees in front of the young man and glorified the hero. The young man, the winner of the demon, was modest. He told them to get up from his knees and would not worry. Residents thanked him for the salvation. The guy joked to himself, because this is just a couple of pigs. When the hunters spread the fire and fled the carcass of the animal, they thought that one demon would be not enough for a whole village to recover from blindness. Then our hero said that he prepared for them a medicine that should cure them from this ailment. He took his bag and untied it. It was just to get dark, so the guy handed out pills to all men and said to accept them. The medicine acted instantly. The peasants rubbed their eyes, not believing that they see well at night. All people again rushed to thank our hero. He said that he was not worth gratitude, but he has one request to put their signatures and support him in the election of the headman. Local residents promised that he would certainly support his candidacy, because he defended them from the monster and the demon. With him, they would be happy. And Zhao Xuanchen ran away and betrayed them how to believe him. The guy was glad that his plan worked, although some unforeseen moments were in it. But thanks to this, he already has the support of 100 inhabitants. The young man had to come up with something further. Among people, he noticed the Master Lin, The guy decided to attract him to his side and gave him his fan. But in return, he wanted to get advice from the master. The gift really impressed the master. He gasped already when he opened it. The young gentleman thanked the hero and decided to help him with advice. Lin pointed out that there is an excellent opportunity because in addition to living by fishing and hunting 100 residents living, there are other 400 residents experience serious food problems. If the hero can solve this problem, then the rest of the people will gladly support him in the elections. Our hero asked who you can contact. The master said that Kunu, who is the head of the economy. Two young people went to the barn where an uncle was almost always located. When they came up, they heard the conversation of the clerk and Uncle Kunu. The latter said that the clerk is very cruel. Inside the large barn stood a clerk with a protection of 2 warriors. Opposite him stood an uncle and several peasants. The barrier said that the price is growing and growing and there is nothing to live for poor people. The clerk was calm. He moved his eyebrows and replied that if for local residents everything is expensive, then let them go and buy products in the city. The old man had white hair and beard color, but his body was slim. He objected to the clerk that the city was far from them, since the price doubled. The boss is condemning to the starvation of the family and they may die. The clerk showed that he was already in a hurry. He said that residents decide if they want to buy something, otherwise the convoy is already leaving. One of the people who stood near his uncle Kunu told him that the whole harvest ate worms and soon they would not have food at all. Another man said that the last time there was enough food for only a couple of days. The old man knew that the merchants came once a month, and if he did not buy, then everyone would remain hungry. Then Uncle said they buy grain. The clerk extended his hand to conclude a deal. Suddenly, the steps of our hero and Master Lin were heard. He stood in front of everyone, opposite the clerk, and said that his uncle would not buy grain, and he has another way to help the peasants. Our hero shouted to the clerk that he was a bargain, a man with a rotten heart, and added to get out of here and never return again. The clerk's Saza has changed in his face. His profitable deal has just broken. The man screamed on the young man. Who was he to command? The boss began to scare that the village would be hungry, and the next time the price would become even larger. But the Master Lin, who became next to his uncle Kunu, told him, did he not hear what the great hero said? When the clerk left, the master put his hand on the old man's shoulder and said that he would not worry, since the hero will find a solution for this problem. Young people one by one began to calm an elderly person. After all, they knew that the hero saved them from the demon and cured their general ailment of local residents, blindness. Su Tsin Yao said that he hears everything and does not need to praise. He warned the inhabitants of the village that he needed 5 days, and he would make sure that they had food. But everyone was counting on the magic that should happen immediately. People were surprised that the hero needed 5 days. At this time, 3, a clerk and 2 old men lurked outside the doors of the barn. These were those old people who wanted to take the post, the elders of the village, and came to the hero with gifts. All of them eavesdropped on the conversation in the barn and conceived a plan together to deprive the village of food. In the barn, the old man Kunu was afraid of whether the hero had enough for 5 days to plan. Because nothing was growing so quickly, the earth should be processed for a long time for this. Our hero said that he has a plan, but for its implementation, you need to find more agricultural guns and cattle. Uncle became sad and said that they have no money to pay for tools and cattle. Another person said that all this is under the control of Zhao Xuanchen or Li Ainai. The guy remembered these old people who came to him with gifts. He told the motivated residents so that they would not be worried. They will necessarily plow the land on time, and he will take care of it. After some time, our hero decided to visit Zhao Xuanchen in his house. This was one elderly man of those 2 who want to be an old. When he entered the room, the 2 master and his guest were sitting at the table, the second contender for the post of elders of the village. The owner asked what brought the young man to his house. Our hero honestly admitted that the Uncle Kunu and his family are starving, and he wants to ask them to lend instruments and cattle for 2 days to cultivate land to grow crops on it. Zhao Xuanchen cried out that the young man was dreaming. The owner of the house knew that our hero also decided to become the headman of the village, so the owner of the house was not going to help his competitor. His other interlocutor, Fat Li Ainai, who was sitting next to the table, said that he was also not ready to help him, especially where the guarantees for the return of all borrowed property. The young man thought how fast these people who hate each other sang. After all, they were only 2 days ago sworn enemies, which means they had a common interest. The young man told them about this. Zhao Xuanchen failed unsuccessfully and told the guy that what was his business, although they were sleeping in the same bed. Another man, Fat Li Ainei, carefully looked at the owner and thought badly about his inclinations. But the owner spread an earnest. Then the young man thought that something was wrong here, since the owner wants him to leave his house faster. The young man closed his eyes for a moment and put his hand to the temple, he thought. Then everything came together in his head, and the young man shouted, pointing to 2 men with his index finger. He said that he understood everything and that vile merchant at the same time with them. The owner jumped up and pointed to the guy to the door. He shouted so that Su Tsin Yao would not dare to slander them. But the young man came closer to the table and said that he has evidence of their conspiracy. Our hero saw that tea was prepared for 3 people. Drops from tea remained on the table. Only the cup was carried away. On the carpet, near the free chair, there were traces of shoes that he saw had a merchant. He told the owner and his interlocutor about these facts. Zhao Xuanchen did not have something to say in his excuse. He only denied and said that the guy was mistaken. But his face became sweaty and frightened. The young man had nothing to talk to them more. He turned and went to the exit. He thought that rumors had already reached them that he wanted to become the head of the village. When the men were left alone, the fat man decided to calm the owner and stroked his hand, but received only a scream in return. Men remained to discuss their further plan. Under a large summer canopy, work boils. Smoke comes from the furnace. There are sounds that are in the blacksmith. This is our hero to work hard, smelting the instruments for cultivating the land from steel. He kept the heated metal and forged the plough with the forceps. Steel melts in a hot furnace in forms. Uncle Kunu, the main household of the village, came to see how the young man was going on. He asked the hero what he was doing. The guy said that 2 people, Zhao Xuanchen and Li Ainai, refused to help, so he decided to do everything with his own hands. The young man explained that he wants to replace the plough with an integral one, which will improve soil treatment. In addition, now he uses not cast iron, but steel. The old man said that it was difficult for him to understand what the young man intended, but he believes in him. Then other people approached the blacksmith. They all surrounded the young man, looked at him in surprise. One ahead of the other, they praised his inventions and said that he was a skilled blacksmith, more abruptly than royal. The young peasant asked the hero, pointing to the plough, what was behind. Su Tsin Yao replied, holding a heavy steel plough in his hands, that tomorrow he will teach them how to use it. Then the young man again set about the robot and worked until late. When the morning, all the peasants came to help the guy. They saw a buffalo that pulled a log on which 8 ploughs were fixed. The driving man controlled the animal. Everyone was surprised whether the wave could plough the field at a time. What was their joy when they saw that the buffalus was easily made 8 even grooves and part of the field was already cultivated. At this moment, Zhao Xuanchen and Li Ainai, along with the merchant, just walked those places. They talked about the fact that the deal would still be held and the villagers would have to buy grain from the merchant. Suddenly, all 3 froze in amazement. On their faces, an expression of surprise and anger froze. The first asked Zhao Xuanchen what was happening here. Only 2 drovers with 2 oxen worked on the field, but the huge field was almost ploughed. Animals pulled some large devices behind themselves. All 3 men approached the field even closer to consider what an ox was pulling behind. They immediately realized that this was the work of the young hero Su Tsin Yao, whom they underestimated. The most evil and insidious among them was a clerk. He said that they would not be worried. Even if the peasants grow a good harvest, he will be able to destroy it in the blink of an eye. The merchant took out a glass jar from his bosom and showed it to 2 interlocutors. He said that he used the talisman of the transfer of messages, and he got a good thing. The clerk brought a glass jar closer to the faces of men, and they examined inside it. Some insect that had a tail, a lot of legs and a large mouth. At this time, our hero decided to think and plan what to do next to increase productivity. He thought that he would need a lot of spiritual energy and went to the slope of the mountain. There, the young man sat down under the crown of a tree in the lotus pose and began training. He plunged into a deep analysis of everything that happened and then decided to train. The young man could not understand why he was so hard to cultivate, but he still has little spiritual energy. It seemed to him that the cultivation method did not fit this environment. Therefore, the young man went to the waterfall and decided to try the cultivation method in the waterfall. He sat on a stone at the place where the water falls down from a great height and began training. Suddenly, the girl Dunmai visited him in this place. She asked what he was busy with. He replied that he was looking for a short path to cultivation which would bring more spiritual energy. The beauty said that there was no short track and just his base of this process is too small. But suddenly, the young man, under the streams of the waterfall, felt a surge of strength. The young man screamed what he did, although before he didn't notice such an effect so quickly. The guy thought, which means that this presence of the girl influenced the increase in his spiritual energy. In an instant, he grabbed the girl and pulled him to him. She was scared, but he, not paying attention, shouted that they would engage in pair cultivation. Then the girl understood his idea and allowed him to take her in his arms. She asked, "Or he is sure that it would work?" The guy decided to try. Holding her in his hands, he began to cultivate. In this way, the young man replenished his spiritual energy, which he needed during the sowing. He prepared plants of plants. Then he decided to make an irrigation well. The effect of spiritual power exceeded his expectations. The plants grew so quickly that in a day it was possible to harvest. The cabbage heads already had a rounded shape and were large. Uncle Kunu came with the young guys to see how the case is moving. None of them believed their eyes how the vegetables could grow so quickly. Everyone began to ask the hero how he did it. Others said that this is incredible and it would be possible to harvest several crops. People were very glad that a hero appeared in their village. At this time, the young man and other people on the field was watched by their enemies. This trinity, Zhao Xuanchen and Li Ainai with the merchant. They hid behind the trees. Men asked the merchant to release his bug on the field of our hero so that the insect would destroy the entire crop. One of the men doubted his ability to eat the whole crop. Then the clerk said that in the air the insect would multiply, and there will be a lot of them because he paid a lot of money for it. The man opened the jar and released the insect in the field. The air really magically affected the beetle. He multiplied at a frantic speed. Zhukov, with a large mouth and teeth, has become hundreds. The workers in the field screamed that it could not be. Insects would destroy their crop, which flew from afar with whole black clouds. The peasants tried to kill beetles, but they could not, as they got in motes and plants and not in bugs. Everyone was very upset and thought that the harvest is ended. As people did not try, they could not do anything. Zhukov became more and more. They hid behind plants, in the soil, flew in the air, and then gnawed at the stems of plants. Our hero alone realized that several devices should be made to combat pests. But there was little time, since the beetles ate green leaves with a huge speed. The guy tried mentally all the well, known and unknown ways of struggle, but he could not think of anything fast and practical. The boy even went out one-on-one with a big shear beetle, which could be their leader. But nothing good came out of this. He just chased him across the field. The guy remembered for the pendant and his girl Dunmai. The guy was angry with himself for not thinking of anything. Suddenly, the one for whom the young man remembered. She ran ahead of him across the field, but did not touch the earth with her feet, but soared in the air. On all directions, she radiated her bright aura. A beetle flew towards her, which was their leader. A whole cloud of his brothers flew after him. The girl created an energy ball with her own hands, which consisted of her spiritual power. Dunmai extended her arms forward, and the flow of energy rushed on small evil insects. He purified the space of evil and beetles and was very strong and all-encompassing. The young man stood closest to the field and saw what his girlfriend was doing. All other people who stood further began to shout that this is the real power of the hero, the holy light. Our hero was worried about the beauty because such work required a lot of spiritual power. He was glad that she helped him when he was in a difficult position, But the girl's condition worsened sharply. She began to cough, choke, and then fell to her knees. The young hero wanted to follow her, but she disappeared. The guy asked mentally what was with her, but there was no answer. His pendant hung on his neck, but he no longer created any radiation. All the people who were running on the field and surrounded him. They told him compliments and praised his abilities. Then each of them wanted at least one hair from his head. The guy quickly decided to leave there, because he was in a hurry to find out how his girlfriend Dunmei feels now. Suddenly, in the way, the young man noticed 3 people. Men talked on the run. One of them said that at least their parasites are destroyed. They will never give up. The other suggested coming up with something else. The young man understood everything. He squeezed his fist and told himself that this trinity, Zhao Xuanchen and Li Ainei with the merchant, now he was precisely angry and we must start taking serious measures. When the guy ran home, he immediately uttered the girl's name several times. But he did not see her and did not even feel her essence. Our hero sat in the lotus pose and clamped the pendant in his hand, but there was no answer. The guy remembered that at that time he got into the pendant through his tear. Su Xinyao remembered the girl when he saw her for the last time on the field. She felt bad, and she disappeared. His tear slowly fell on the magic pendant. He hoped that everything would be fine with her. The pendant was slowly activated. The guy thought he could not cry, but he was very sad and could. The guy was transferred to the virtual reality, where he stood on the sand and behind him was a blue lake. The sky was blue with white floating clouds that were reflected in the water. Suddenly he saw a girl who was lying on the sand without feelings. He quickly ran to her and took her in his arms. He called her name several times and asked to wake up. But the girl did not react. Her eyes were closed. The guy asked himself what to do next. He remembered that after the conclusion of the contract, his essence was supposed to support her. The young man realized that he needed to train in order to increase the level of spiritual power, which may be transmitted to the girl. The young man was still sitting in the room and holding a pendant in his hands. But he knew that there was in another reality the girl had already come to life, and it became easier for her. Although this led to the fact that he himself could not even move now, since all his spiritual power was given to him for Dunmei. He could only train now, holding a pendant in his hands. The girl said that he was practicing star martial art, but then she will teach him another martial art, which is much stronger. He said that he would wait for this to be impatiently. Then the girl decided that the hour had come to learn one technique, a section of emptiness. She said that now he should listen to him carefully. When the energy is immersed in the body, moving to the heavenly root, it passes through the point where the soul is located and then lowers to the navel point. Su Xinyao tried the reception. It was like a sword in his hands, but he was invisible, but only noticeable, but worked without fail. The clay jugs standing on the table scattered into the rattles. Very little time passed, but the young man had already mastered this technique and even thought about improving the reception. His girlfriend praised him for zeal. The guy coached this skill again and again to master it perfectly. He wielded skills skillfully, and after a while, he could make a powerful energy beam that crushed everything. But the young man, as an inventor, decided to change and improve her. He attached a very thin TSI thread to the sword. The young man explained to the beauty that if you make a sufficient effort, then you can control the direction of the thread and make the actions that are necessary for the holder of strength. The young man decided to boast of his knowledge and skills before the beautiful beauty. He called himself a crazy creator and was satisfied with himself today. Perenek thought that, having improved the method of cutting the void, he made it accurate and simple. And if he lifted his level of spiritual power, he could achieve the results abruptly. Su Xinyao immediately began training. He sat in the lotus pose and closed his eyes. He noted to himself that he finally reached the level of strengthening the tendons. Suddenly, the guy heard some quiet sound. He looked at the ring on his hand, something opened there, and suddenly a rectangular shade appeared. The young man asked that this himself gave an answer that it was like a small generator. He thought that such a thing is useful to him here. The immortals can produce spiritual energy, and here it's generator. The guy decided to immediately look at or the device works. The effect was instant, his hair rose, his spiritual energy was prohibitive. Although he was so small, but very powerful. At the same time, the Uncle Kunu and the Master Lin came to the house of our hero and saw that something strange was done with him, but at the same time, scared for his life. The young man told the guests that he was all right, he just has a new hairstyle. He joked and asked them that he was not beautiful. The guests laughed in response, making sure that everything was fine with him, and he was even joking. But the uncle and the master came on business. An elderly person brought signatures of 400 inhabitants who want Sutsinyo to become their headman. The young man said that he was grateful to his uncle for this, so he will try to justify their trust. The old man said that the hero deserved this, as he had already done so many good deeds for the inhabitants of there sat down. The Master Lin supported him and said that everyone would respect him and love him. Suddenly, another honorary local resident entered the house who kept the seal of the village. He told the guy that he specially brought him the DAO seal. The old man put a small tied bag on the table in front of the young man. He said that when he is growing up, the well-being of the village will depend on the hero. An elderly man told the young man that there is a secret place behind the seal where knowledge of many techniques is stored, but the path is very dangerous, so he needs to be careful. The young man said that with him, the villagers will be fed and dressed. The old man said that he would go to collect the inhabitants and declare the hero, Sutsinyo, the headman. The whole village should celebrate this event. After some time, the whole village gathered in the square. On the stage, made from wooden boards that towered above the ground, two people appeared, this elder and our hero. An elderly man told everyone present that the great hero of Su Tsin Yao, with whom they all admire, collected 500 signatures and become the head of Guanmin. Suddenly, someone's voice rang out that the old man had waited. He was a grain merchant that stood in the center. Zhao Xuanchen, Li Ainai stood with him with several people. Each of them threatened young men with death. But all people shouted that they would protect their hero and leader. The young man mentally asked the pendant what is the level of his enemies and whether he could defeat. The clerk threatened the young man most of all. He said that he would not hide behind the backs of a large number of people. But the young man told him that he, like a fish on the shore, is useless. Then the boss began to offer to fight one-on-one without people. Zhao Xuanchen said that he would dissolve people and go to fight with the merchant. Their people were still behind. After some time, the enemies stood opposite the young man who was alone. All of them stood in the river in shallow water. The young man said that he could defeat them with one blow. They did not believe him. The young man conceived something. Using his generator, the hero decided to punish his enemies. He quietly lowered him into the water, and a small device created a powerful charge of energy in the water. Water, like a good conductor, transferred the charge to people in water. All opponents received a powerful blow with electric shock. Their hair and bodies were discharged. The young man stood and watched as a merchant and his people, having merged, began to get out of the water to the shore. All of them rushed off. The men were with frightened faces and could not recover. They never experienced this in their lives. Their bodies were still trembling and their hair stuck up. The young man asked the village who these people are and who stands behind them. The elder replied that these are bandits with tsimina, so you need to be on a check because they are very bad people. The guy stood in front of the locals. They were all worried that they had little food, but they were more disturbed by the fact that the bandits could attack their women and children. Then the young headman decided to go and ask the elder how far these bandits live. The young man understood that the threat to children and women was very large, so he had a plan. The new headman turned to the locals and said that they need to build fortifications during the night and they will be able to protect their homes. But people said that this would not help because there are hundreds of bandits there. The peasants said that the level of opponents was very high because their leaders were already at the peak of the spiritual kingdom. Most of all were saddened by women who stood behind men with children. But the young man was confident in himself and said that if they want, they would be able to defeat any enemy, just the main thing to show ingenuity and have a firm faith in victory. The new headman continued that everyone would now do what he would say, all this to preserve their houses and families. 15 minutes later, our hero handed out drawings. He said that he made a plan of the town and designated defensive structures. Each group should follow his plan to every little thing. All people, breaking into groups, began to study the plan developed by the hero. They believed him. The new headman thought that the bandits did not suspect that they were waiting ahead. The next morning, a large group of riders quickly rushed along the road leading to the village. They were headed by the head of the bandits. He repeated all the time so that no one lagged behind. After some time, the bandits left the forest and surrounded the settlement. Their leader said that the inhabitants of the village of Guanmin would give all their food, women and money to their knees and asked for pardon. Our hero was at the gate of the village, which was now surrounded by a wall according to his drawings. He told the bandits that they would not dream, but cleaned up while they were alive. The enemies shouted how he dares to threaten a bunch of peasants. The leader shouted to the bandits to destroy the village and equal it to the ground. All riders took out weapons and rushed forward. On their horses, men rushed at the entire speed to the walls of the village in order to start killing the inhabitants and rob the village. Ahead of all was their leader. Suddenly, the horses at the entire speed fell into the pits of the tramps, who dug and masked the peasants according to the plan of the young man. Animals broke their feet, neck, and crushed their riders. The plan of the young man was that he knew the location of the underground caves, from which it was possible to make a good trap for riders. No wonder the young man taught geology. But not all warriors fell into the trap. Their leader turned his horse and shouted the right flank that there was a trap. He was surprised how the inhabitants dug such deep pits at night. One of the riders reported to the leader of the bandits that he saw a barbed wire around the village. The boss said that the bandits get off the horses, climb the walls, and cut the wire. A few minutes later, the enemies did what their leader ordered. But it turned out that the wire was energized, and all of them, having received an electric shock, hit the dead. This trap was made by the Masterlin with his assistants. They used the hero generator for this. Having won the wire along the wall, the villagers connected it to the generator. This is an excellent energy system that the young master, according to the Elders Project, organized. Many of the robbers found their death hanging on a wire, but many of the enemies were still alive. The head of the gang headed them. He shouted to them to go forward. 3 warriors appeared in front of our hero. Behind each of them, there was a sword. The head of the bandits with Samina asked the young elder what other tricks they prepared for them. Suddenly, on 3 bandits, a strong stream of water began to pour under the pressure, knocking them down. This Uncle Kunu, along with another young girl from the hoses, was soaked well bandits. The robbers thought why they were simply soaked because it would not stop them. The villains did not know that our hero had prepared a surprise for them. He threw his generator into the water near the enemies. The powerful discharge pierced the wet bodies and clothes of 3 bandits. It happened so instantly that they could not avoid this. Their body arched an arc, their hair stuck up. The young man was pleased with himself since everything was exactly as he planned. He said that everything worked perfectly and they won. Suddenly, the headman saw that 3 villains, led by Boss, were approaching him. They had a very battered look. They had abrasions and injuries, but they were still alive. The leader of the bandits, who, having clenched his teeth, hissed that he had not lost yet. The leader bounced very high and was behind the girl, who before that watered them from the hose and stood not far from the young elder. The robber grabbed the beauty by the neck and shouted that he would kill the girl if someone approached him. All young people rushed to the rescue. They wanted to kill the villain. They all shouted what he wants from a poor girl. But the boss of the robbers fought off their legs and, taking the girl with one hand, moved to the gates of the village to escape. The bandit was very aggressive and at any moment could strangle the beauty. The brave young man blocked his path, but the villain shouted that no one would take a girl from him. Our hero ordered the main robber to leave the girl alone and move away. At this moment, dark clouds closed the sun. The robber shouted that he would strangle her. Suddenly, the sun again looked out from behind the cloud, and our hero, carefully following the actions of the robber, it seemed that he was mowing with his eyes. For a moment, the villain closed his eyes with his hand, from the sun, but then again he pressed the girl's throat tightly with his other hand. Suits and Yao noticed that the robber had something with his eyes. The new headman invited the enemy to fight one-on-one. If the hero wins, then the bandit would let the girl go, leave this village alone. If the enemy wins, then he will be the main thing here. It was risky to offer such conditions, since the robber had a high level, but our hero was confident in victory. He mentally told Dunmei so that she would not be worried about him. Then, the main robber pushed the girl into the hands of his assistant and said not to lower her eyes off her. The villain pulled out his sword and began to approach the new elder of the village. Su Xin Yao decided to take up positions and wanted to draw a circle on the ground. He was without weapons and decided to keep the enemy at a distance. But all that he conceived collapsed in the next instant. The enemy decided to play by his own rules and not listen to instructions. He jumped up high and attacked the guy from the air unexpectedly and quickly. Our hero realized that this is a villain, not an obedient boy. The first blow missed, the sword whistled right next to the hero's head. It's good that he managed to evade. The second attack began immediately. The blow that the robber wanted to make was conceived by great power. The enemy held the sword with two hands and attacked again from above. Our hero tried to resist the enemy, but his level was not sufficient for defense from such powerful blows. No matter how the guy tried to put up protection, he was weaker than the enemy. With two hands, Su Xin Yao barely restrained the next blow. His protective field was divided into dozens of fragments from the blows of the main robber. A little more accurate blows of the enemy, his body will reach. The first time that the blow knocked over the young man and he flew several meters, crashed into the wall. The guy thought that with his current level, he could not block the blows of the enemy. The young man barely got up. The villain stepped on him with a highly raised sword in his hand. The enemy was very pleased with himself and confident in his victory. He said that the last blow remained and everything will be over. Our hero, sitting on the ground, repeated his words behind the robber that everything would be over. He prepared for the attack. His invisible sword arose in his hands, who cut everything. The assistants to the leader of the bandits noticed this and decided to tell the boss. One of them shouted so that the boss was careful for the hero of the sword. But he did not understand what kind of sword, because the guy had no previously. A moment later, when the leader looked at the young man, he felt a weapon in his chest which injured him mortally. He only said one word. "Why?" Our hero stood over the body of a defeated enemy. Two robbers who survived, leaving the girl, rushed at the owls. Residents of the village began to catch up with bandits with pitchfork and shovels. The girl was released. She sat on the grass, not believing that she was saved. Our hero told people not to be worried because a few Shakovs without a leader will no longer be able to do anything to them. Dunmei thoughtfully asked the hero how he was able to defeat such a strong enemy who has a greater level than his. The young man joked that she sometimes slows down. The young man wanted to explain everything in order. Since he carefully watched the boss of the robbers, the guy noticed his squint. When the robber held the girl by the throat, the sun suddenly came out, and the enemy began to avoid sunlight. So the hero suggested that he is a color blind, that is, he does not distinguish some colors. Since the enemy was a color blind, he would not notice the use of TSI, and the young man decided to hide the invisible sword behind his back. Only at the last minute, the enemy understood this, but it was too late. All people rushed to thank the young starret for the victory over the robbers. Just yesterday, they all thought that the villains would be doomed to both women and children, and now they are free and happy. Most of all, the young men began to thank the girls, especially the girl who grabbed and wanted to steal the leader of the gang. She said that, since the guy saved her, he can now have everything. But the young man wanted to quickly get rid of these harassment of girls. His pendant began to directly burn his body. He felt that something had happened to his Dunmei. The young man interrupted this scene with caresses and told the girls what was enough. All the beauties were upset. They were counting on his attention. Su Xin Yao was in a hurry. He wanted to see his girlfriend. The pendant was getting hotter and hotter. He shouted to all people that he should go since he has urgent affairs. When after a few minutes he plunged into the virtual world of Kulon, he saw his Dunmei on the shore of the lake, which was sitting on the sand. The young man approached her and asked her what was with her. The beauty said that she was not good because when all the girls began to pester him, she felt that from this, she felt painful and unpleasant. Then the guy said that she was probably jealous of him to other girls. Dunmei repeated this word behind him. Jealous? The girl thought she was getting better and better next to him. The young man decided that they would not talk about it anymore, since there are more important things to do. After all, he had a seal of the elder of the village, and he suggested that they go to the forbidden zone. After some time, the guy went to the entrance to the cave along the road that the young man from the village once showed him. Before the entrance, he stopped and pulled out the headman's seal from his bosom. The guy held her forward in front of him on his outstretched hand and said that she would open the door in the forbidden ground. A guard with a long axe appeared in front of a young man. He said to open the forbidden zone. He needs to be at least at the level of the spiritual kingdom, and he has only 10 days for this. Our hero was angry with the guard why he did not tell him about this restriction before, because he could prepare. The girl said that it is not realistic to achieve such a short time in such a short time. But then, having thought a little, an interesting idea arose in his head and he told Dunmei so that it would not worry because he is a hero and 10 days. This is not so little. The guy decided to settle in a small courtyard near the forbidden land. There was a chicken coop and a large courtyard where the chicken took their chickens to pluck green grass. The young man chose a quiet place for his training. There was a spring on the hill, in front of a small house, a whole field, a little economy. The young man began training. He sat in the lotus pose and closed his eyes, recalling everything that the girl taught him. He did not forget for his plan, the invention of incandescent lamp for immortal. The guy sat down at the table and took everything that he could need for invention tools and materials. Su Tsin Yao knew the principle of operation of the device, but suitable materials had to be looked for. He did it with his own hands, something like a thread of incandescent, and placed it under a glass flask. The young man was pleased with himself and again felt like an inventor, even though he repeated that which was invented for a long time, but did it with his own hands. The lamp shone brightly. Dunmai really liked this little miracle. Suddenly she said that if he gives her this lamp, she will become his girlfriend forever. The young man laughed and said that she could take a lamp, and so he will do more. She was very happy and decided to hug him right there, sitting on the table when he approached her to hug her too. The guy said that he would do many more spiritual things of trousers and socks. She said that she wants to be the first to test everything. The young man thought it looked a little too much. A moment later, the young man thought that he was distracted from his plan. Now he needs to come up with a system of spiritual irrigation in order to transform all this into food, because he has only 10 days. The young inventor decided to use the enriched water for watering vegetables and feeding poultry. He charged the whole capacity with his spiritual energy. The field of watering the field worked without fail. The crop should surpass all expectations. Vegetables and fruits grew literally before our eyes. The next day, there were already results. The vegetables have already ripened and were very tasty and fragrant. The young man was pleased with them. It gave him a new charge of energy and vigor. The young man felt a surge of spiritual power. He reflected that if you use seeds when growing, then the effect is doubled. The guy was glad of everything achieved. His level of spiritual power increased. He looked at poultry and thought that now it was better to call them spiritual chickens and ducks. 3 days later, when the sun was at the very top of the sky, not far from the places where our hero lived, a cat squealed. One little Earth's cat decided to block the path to the Master of Ban, who was a huge and black monster with large teeth. The Earth's cat was much smaller and prettier than a master. There was a fight. Ban was full of spiritual energy, but the Earth's cat, not a dramatic ball, and scratched him. He was defeated. Pulling his tongue, Ban Master lay on the grass and asked for mercy. The earthly fellow, maybe for a long time, would jump on top of the lying poor fellow, but smelled a beautiful smell of fresh meat. He quickly jumped onto the high branch of the tree and looked into the distance. Then the striped cat saw a well-groomed field of vegetables in front of a small house and a young man who trained sitting on the porch of the house. The wise cat recalled how the young man appeared in the village for the first time. This happened when the fireball fell to the ground. Because of this, the beast could not reborn and go to the next stage. The Earth's cat decided that it was a young man to blame, that he could not reborn and become a great cat, so he decided to take revenge on the young man. A small animal decided to destroy the young man. The beast ran to the house and thought that if not for this person, then he would be a big tiger and he would have not been here a long time ago. The little animal represented himself lying in a cozy chair, and next to him there are many cats that would like to please him, since he could become a nobleman. The cat recalled that he was engaged in cultivating at a very high level and was about to break into the highest level when a fireball appeared, because of which his reincarnation was interrupted. After this incident, no matter how the beast tried, he did not come back everything. He even turned into an earthly ordinary cat, although he retained unusual power. The ugly little beast jumped over the fence and was already near the house. He had only one thought in his head: about revenge. At this time, our hero was at the table that stood in the yard. In one hand, he had a knife, and in the other, a killed chicken. This was the first bird that grew on spiritual food, and she itself became, therefore, spiritual food. Suddenly, the young man saw a cat who ran to the table and began to meow. He held his tail high and looked at the chicken. The guy cut off one leg and handed it to the animal with the words that the cat also wants a piece of spiritual chicken. The cat thought he was here for revenge and not for snacks. But the smell of meat was so fragrant that he, being a gourmet, smelled his fragrance. Su Tsin Yao came closer to a small animal, seeing that he did not eat meat, and said that he would definitely try, and he liked it. A minute later, succumbing to persuasion, the cat had already tried the chicken leg. The beast thought that when he eats, he would take revenge even more. The animal felt a surge of strength. The cat thought how this chicken has such spiritual power before it had never eaten such unusual meat. The animal wanted even more meat. The man gave him a whole carcass. The cat thought how this guy could breed such spiritual birds, then what level of cultivation he achieved. The smart animal thought how correctly that she did not attack the young man at once. Otherwise it was not known what level he has, since instead of victory would be a defeat. The owner of the house went to the cat and stroked him. He said that this beast is probably a homeless animal and, if he wants, can live with him so far. The beast thought a wonderful idea occurred to him. He bent a young man right in his arms, pressed his whole body against him, and hesitated cheerfully. The evil one wanted to wait for time to revenge. The young man stroked the animal and said that now he needs to give a name, and he was good to give names. The cat thought that he would behave like an ordinary animal, so as not to arouse suspicion. The young man decided to name the Chow Tsai household. It seemed to him that this name would bring the animal happiness, as it meant a lucky one. But the cat did not take this name well. He was not satisfied. The young man said that the name is very suitable for the animal, and now they will heal together happily. At this time, at the foot of the mountain, which is not far from a small house, where rays of light penetrated through the crowns of trees, there was a growl of wild animals. There was a girl who stood on the path when 3 wild, huge black cats were approaching her. It was the princess of the southern kingdom, Van Lutzi, which was armed with a sword. The animals that surrounded her were cunning and fast. They smelled of meat, but the smell did not come from the girl. The girl was very upset, seeing in front of her such strong animals that acted together. She thought that she would die soon, why she escaped from the palace alone. At the same time, the cat of our hero Chow Tsai, who did not like as his master called, decided to run away from the house where he was sheltered. He jumped through the window and ran across the field. The touchy baby founted further and further away from the young man's house. He thought that what a shame to be a named ordinary name, as if he was some kind of courtyard cat. Suddenly, from the fact that the cat ate a lot of spiritual meat of the bird, its rebirth occurred and a small animal turned into a huge black demon of a cat breed. The animal received a new level. This level was the way the beast had before he saw the fireball. It recovered to the state of the immortal demon. At this time, at the foot of the mountain, the girl, raising her sword, shouted to 3 wild cats so that the animals would not approach her, otherwise she would kill them all. The beauty had not bad training and was confident in herself. This bunch of demonic animals had a lower level, so she thought that she would cope with them. Suddenly, a terrible noise rang out behind the girl. 3 black wild cats came into a terrible wee. Their eyes widened. They were frightened by the black monster that arose from the forest. After a second, there were no 3 animals on the path. They threw themselves up. Only the girl remained there. The beauty turned around and was taken aback. The formidable adversary, who spent 3 demonic cats to flight, was directly opposite the princess. It was a black monster who moved quickly directly to the princess. Its size was huge. He had strong paws and sharp teeth. The monster easily took the girl into her mouth and ran to the young man's house. Princess Van Lutzy screamed to be released. It's good that the beast did not squeeze his mouth, but simply held the princess in his mouth. The beast came up with that he would give the beauty to his master, that he made him so strong again for a reward. He already dreamed of how a young man gives him a lot of chicken meat. A few minutes later, a huge black monster was already near the gate of the house of our hero. As soon as the beast crossed the gate, it turned into an ordinary home cat. The beauty lay on the lawn in front of the house. Out of fear, she was afraid to open her eyes that she was with her. When the princess opened her eyes, she saw an ordinary medium-sized homemade cat near her and heard meowing. She sat on the lawn near a small house, from the window of which the light fell. The girl realized that a huge beast turned to a little cat. The monster brought her to the house of his master. The princess looked out the window and saw an incandescent lamp made by a young man. She thought that only one torch, and how light here, probably, the owner of the house was very resourceful. The beauty saw a ranger for watering a lawn and thought that the owner was very inventive and loves nature. The princess of the southern kingdom of Van Lutzy was surprised how everything in the courtyard was skillfully arranged using spiritual power. It seemed to her that the owner loves life and nature. Suddenly, water sprayed from the pattern. The girl cried out in surprise and jumped up. She closed her hand, but her hair and clothes got wet. She became chilly. Just our hero, having heard a scream, left the house and asked that his cat Chow Tsai had already done. Suddenly, a young man saw a beautiful girl who stood near the house. She asked the guy who he was. A cat ran between two people on the grass and meowed all the time. The girl thought that the powerful beast in front of the guy turned into a simple home cat. What kind of spiritual strength he possesses. Chow Tsai approached the young man and he understood him right away. The owner asked that the cat made a gift to him in the form of a girl and he wanted food for it. The cat showed that the girl was wet. Then Su Tsin Yao invited the beauty to go into the house, gave her to change, put her at the table and watered with hot ginger tea. When the girl drank tea, she warmed a little. The cold left her body and the warmth went down from the bottom. The ginger tea, who drank the guest, acted on her immediately. She felt the strength and surge of vigor. The girl thought about how he could act so quickly. The stranger felt powerful spiritual energy in his body. She immediately got up and wanted to thank the young man. Her spiritual level rose from a cup of tea alone. She felt it very much. She did not feel anything like this in her life before. The beauty told the young man that she feels much better than before and her spiritual power increased. The girl said that she was from the southern kingdom, got lost in these lands, and she had no one else to turn to. If the owner permits, she will remain and drink 1 cup of tea a day. The beauty said that her name is Van Lutzy and she is ready to do everything for the master of this house. The young man asked, or she is ready to do so for him. He mysteriously watched her figure. When he said that he wanted, the guest asked him, or he wants it in fact. They began to reach the yard from the house, some moans and screams. The girl screamed so that he would not do this. Bright light broke through the window. It became dark. Then the guest's voice was heard, which is already ready. It turned out that the owner made brown stockings for her, in which she felt very conveniently. The young man could not deny himself the pleasure of watching the guest through the crack in the doorway. He was pleased that she had settled in his house. But the guy completely forgot about the practice of immortality. Finally, when the beauty left the bedroom, changing into stockings and a short robe, she was very attractive. She asked how she looks. The guy turned and was taken aback by what he saw. The spiritual power that was in stockings gave a powerful impulse of her female essence. The girl simply went to the young man readily to make him pleasantly. The guy realized how spiritual stockings affected her. She went to him with the words that she was ready to do everything he would say. Suddenly, the young man screamed so that she would not approach him. The young man began to see the entire inner structure. This change frightened him. Now he sent a guest to sleep, and he decided to talk with Dunmei. He told her to arise because it is her hand. The image of the beauty arose in the dark. She said that he was not doing what she was needed because only a few days left for training to get into the forbidden zone, and he is obsessed with the girls. The guy asked to teach him a new method of training in order to absorb faster. The girl said that there is a way. This is visualization. You can see the internal structure of things through the outside world. Dunmai continued to explain that recently the guy launched the visualization process and saw all the internal meridians of this Van Lutzi. The young man agreed that it was a terrible sight. The young man sat in the lotus pose and began training. He thought, after meeting the right person, you can increase your level of cultivation and get closer to the great DAO. The guy continued the training and realized that if everything in this world is compared with the programs, then the visualization plan is the program code. Then the guy went to the table and began to draw. Dunmai explained that you can create visualizations on feelings. The more they create them, the closer you will be to the truth. He thought about the code. The next morning, when the sun illuminated the courtyard near the house with bright rays where our hero lived, a terrible noise at the gate rang out. This is some kind of tall man to the foot decided to take out the gate. There were 3 uninvited guests. One of the men said that the guy who killed the merchant lives here. The other called the main head of the grandfathers over them. The eldest man said he would punish the guy. 3 strangers, knocking out the gate, went into the courtyard. Van Lutzi looked out of the house. She was in a short dress and stockings that the owner of the house made. She told the guys that the master was resting now. The girl closed the door. But one of the guests pointed to the house with his hand and said that the owner was not polite and would not tell him what to do. Another man came up and opened the doors with all his might. The beauty was frightened. 3 strangers were already on the threshold. One of them said that they did not need permission to enter. This man was very aggressive. He is the first of them to go into the house. Van Lutzi realized that this man was stronger than her, and she could not cope with him. Men behaved very rudely. 3 passed the living room and headed for the bedroom. The man who was more aggressive than the rest shouted that Su Tsinyu would come out right away. When 3 men entered the bedroom, they saw a young man sleeping on the bed, and the cat is near the floor. Around the bed, drawings with different signs were scattered. The eldest of strangers raised one. A drawing was drawn on a sheet of paper. The eldest man asked 2 partners what it was. One replied that this was a high-level talisman. An elderly man was surprised that the owner painted him himself. The young man continued to sleep sweetly on the bed. The boss said that it was outrageous. Such a valuable thing as this drawing, the talisman of power, is lying like garbage. The old man looked at the food that the cat ate. He felt the energy that he came from him and said that even the food of the cat is 10 times more valuable than all the missing food. The stranger went to the bed and looked at the sleeping young man. He thought that this guy was simply incredible. At this time, Van Lutzi ran into the bedroom and shouted to the master to wake up. The girl jumped onto the bed and tried to wake the owner of the house. He slowed him down and loudly said that 3 strangers burst into their house. The beauty was in a short dress. When she sat next to her young man on the bed, it was a very interesting situation, and an older man, unable to restrain her base feelings, said that it was fine. But the girl could not allow the stranger to speak such speeches. She came up and wanted to strike him with his foot on his head. Only she did not calculate her strength as the man grabbed her leg. The girl screamed so that the man would let her go. Suddenly, an invisible energy hand grabbed a stranger's hand holding the girl's leg and took her away from her. The owner woke up and said that you can't do that. The boss immediately felt that the young man had powerful spiritual energy and cannot be underestimated. The stranger asked for forgiveness and said that he could not resist the sight of such beauty. The young man said that if a man wants stockings, then he has a lot of them and he makes them himself, but there is no need to have enough for the girl. The guy handed a couple of brown stockings to him. The stranger took a couple of stockings and said that this is a beautiful thing. Handmade, very excellent quality. The girl thought, so the guest was not interested in her legs, but stockings. Then the man took out a red bra from his bosom. He said at the same time that he has something similar, and maybe the master knows why this thing. He handed the bra to the owner of the house. The girl thought it was a very beautiful thing, but for some reason looking at her, she was very embarrassed. The young man was very surprised to see such a thing here. The master of stockings thought where such things came from. Maybe there are still people from the future who visited me. The boy examined the logo on the LSP bra. An elderly man asked, the owner of the house knows this sign. The old man said that these symbols are a distinctive feature of the Lao Sepi business generation, who was an extraordinary person whose inventions changed his life. But this person, later disappeared. The young man thought that this logo coincides with what he has, and there is something to reflect on. The owner of the house asked an elderly guest to the table. When the old man sat down at the table next to the young man, he said that Lao Sepi did not disappear, but hides. He also created something under the name Sushi One. He had a token that allowed him to command everyone. Suddenly, our hero remembered that he had a token in his ring with the inscription, "The Greatest Order of LSP," which means that this was related to Sushi One. Van Lutze approached the table. She put red apples on the table and said that the guests would try the fruits grown by the owner. An elderly man took an apple and bit it. As soon as he swallowed a piece, he felt spiritual power and realized that fruits were able to develop the body and increase the level of cultivation. The old man was very cunning. He realized that this young man was not simple. Maybe he, from the circle of Sushi One faces, and if he cooperates with him, he will have 100 million and he will become a richest person. The guest and the owner ate apples, sitting at the table. The old man said that he has an idea and he does not know or talk about it. To which the young man said that since he doubts, then let him not speak. The guy knew that judging by his experience in watching different films, there should be nothing good after such words. The old man immediately changed his expression on his face and the smile disappeared. A minute later, Van Lutze approached the table. The owner of the house told her to give out the apples of the villagers who have matured in the garden. The girl said she would fulfill the request. An elderly businessman thought how the young man can give out such valuable fruits to ordinary people because they can be favorably sold. Two accomplices that were with him were also surprised by the decision. The man got up from his chair. The old man bowed to the owner of the house and said goodbye. The young man also got up and bowed back. When the Trinity went out of the gate, one of the men said that how to return empty-handed. The old man smiled maliciously and told him that he had never left empty-handed. The old man went to the garden. There under the apple trees, ripe fruits were lying. He told young people that the inhabitants of the village did not even suspect how valuable the fruits are, so they need to buy apples in cheap. A few days passed. A beautiful girl stood on the balcony and looked into the distance. She was very thoughtful. She was wearing a red short dress and stockings. The maid, dressed in a long dress, came up with a tray to her from behind, bowed, and said that the owner sent her apple. The mistress took the red apple and asked where this spiritual apple came from. The maid replied that the fruits were bought from the Chamber of Commerce at a high price, but the place where they are grown are kept secret. The girl thought that it was LU fruit, and after she gets out of here, she would certainly find him. At this time, a skirmish took place in the Chamber of Commerce. To the merchants that sold spiritual apples, a gang of bold robbers came, the leader of which demanded that he be given seeds of fruit. The merchants said that it was their headman who created spiritual fruits and robbers would not receive any seeds. The leader of the bald guys poked in the first of the merchants a finger and said that he would repeat. All people from the traders armed their hoes, shovels and braids. The leader of the bald one called them the village and said that there should be someone normal among them. The merchant replied that the level of development of their village elder is incomprehensible and let them not be lifted up, otherwise they will receive deserved. The assistant to the leader of the bandits said that the headman is a strong man. Then the leader said that they should get a spiritual fruit into their own hands. The main bandit thought that if the headman agrees to cooperate with them, then they would get rich. And if he refuses, they would simply kill him. At this time, in the small house, Esu Tsinyao was busy drawing signs. The guy painted brown paint on yellowish paper with a brush. The young man withdrew the drawing with a brush and at the same time said that the child on paper was a wild animal who froze in an attack. Done my sword all the time near the table. She took the drawing and looked at him carefully. The girl said, "Why the frame is so large and round and that line is long and wide, you need to redraw." Suddenly, a young man overturned his back on a chair and painfully hit the floor. He joked that he had not met such a strict teacher since he went to kindergarten. Van Lutze ran into the room for noise. Then the owner told her, holding out the drawing so that she would use a damaged pattern to breed fire. The young man was completely drooping his head and remained sitting on the floor. When the girl left the room, she looked at the drawing and thought to study it. The beauty sat down near the burning furnace, but she did not want to burn the owner's drawings. Suddenly, behind her, there was a noise of steps. She heard the question of the man where their headman lives. The girl got up and put down the drawing on the table. These people that came were all bald. They were dressed the same, in short pants and brown shirts. They rude to the girl and she wanted to leave. Their leader came up, took a drawing from the table and sat down in the lotus position by the stove. He examined the drawing and said that this is a sign that seems to him the cause of all things. The robber plunged into his world. He said that his cultivation for a long time was stagnated, but today, as soon as he saw this symbol, he had seen and raised his level. Van Lutzy stood behind the leader. She looked at the seated stranger, who, without looking up, looked at the drawing and asked him what he was doing with their firewood. The stranger thought how to use such a treasure as drawings, in the form of firewood, and who is the local old man. At this time, our hero decided to interrupt his drawing classes and go out into the yard. He went to the girl and said, "Or not to eat chicken soup today." Sutsinya was stripped to the waist, as there was sunny weather, but he sneezed loudly and wondered. Suddenly, he noticed a stranger sitting near the stove with his drawing. The owner invited him to stay. Suddenly, the leader of the gang rushed to the Nuthek. All his accomplices also ran after him. They asked him for a raid why they were running away. The boss said that since the headman burned such drawings, then his level is high, he is smart and strong. He needs to please. The assistant leader asked what to please him, if he has everything, even a beauty. After some time, when the owner's cat did not live on the grass near the house, someone took him in his arms and stroked affectionately. These were 3 beautiful girls in short dresses and bare shoulders. They had long, straight hair. The one who stood in the middle and took the cat said that the cat is very sweet. Cat Chow Tsai outraged this behavior of unfamiliar girls because he considered himself a fierce beast and did not like other hands. Behind the girls stood the bandits who came to the owner of the house before that. The leader stroked the cat and said that he hopes that the owner of the house would like the girls who are here as a gift. The wise little animal immediately realized that these girls are here to seduce his master, which means that these guys have bad intentions. The beast wanted to deal with the villains who conceived such an insidious plan. The animal transformed into a huge black monster, but I would fight. The guys, seeing the monster, rushed. 3 girls fell in front of a demonic animal on their knees and asked to spare them. The monster said that they would clean and do not interfere with his owner. The beast was so convincing that everyone ran away. After some time, 4 sellers of vegetables and fruits gathered between the market rows on the market, who discussed that their valuable goods are not in demand here. One of the sellers said that the main merchant had a boycott and now no one is coming to their village for groceries. The other suggested going to the headman for advice. Suddenly, the beauty Van Lutzy appeared there. She had a loudspeaker in her hands. She said that the inhabitants of the village would not panic. The headman specially sent her to solve the problem. A brave girl looked very attractive in a short dress, and so she liked the stockings. She said that she could contact the Hui Chamber of Commerce to buy their vegetables and fruits. One of the merchants was immediately delighted because this is the best Chamber of Commerce, which could pay a fair price for the goods. The sellers began to praise the older and say that he has such ties omnipotent time, so the village will begin to flourish and they will become rich. At the same time, in a small house, voices were heard. Dunmei told the young man so that he would not be lazy and painted well. The girl, like a fairy, soared around his table, and he sat behind him and showed her the drawing he had just painted. He said that he worked on him for 3 nights and 3 days, and that she thinks about the drawing. The beauty joyfully said that he reached the lower level of ascension to the kingdom of immortals. A little more practice, and he will be able to go to the forbidden zone. The young man stood down the chair down. He said that he finally feels this level and then could sleep a little. The smell spread throughout the courtyard of a small house where our hero lived. Cut Chiao Tsai, sitting near the gate, smelled something fragrant, but he could not quit his post. He guarded the gate. The animal licked and thought how it smells delicious. 3 bold robbers hiding behind the fence specially did it. One of them said that the feline mint that they used was the most expensive in the market, so no cat can resist the temptation. The smell defeated the animal, and the cat quickly ran along the path leading to the forest. He could not resist such a temptation. The leader of the villains was delighted that his plan worked. Now, the path was free. The boss told 2 assistants that he wanted to see what the owner of the house is capable of. Suddenly, I heard the girl's voice behind myself. She said that he was asking about abilities. The beauty stood with her hands in front of herself and was confident in herself. 3 men laughed. One of them said that this is just a little girl and not some master. They looked appraisingly at the girl from top to bottom. The leader said that his brother has no special abilities, he just wants to invite the girl to listen to music. There was a flute in the guy's hands. When the guy played, a magical musical aura formed. The beauty thought it was a sound attack, and it seemed that these guys found a magic weapon for attack. The girl thought that she ate all this time and drank in the house of the master, and now it's time to repay him. The beauty told the guys that she would like to perform some kind of musical work with them. She picked up the tool, lute. This is one of the types of Chinese string instrument. When the girl touched the strings, beautiful music poured around the yard, occupying more and more space. The leader playing on the flute thought that the sounds of her instrument are very strong, so the beauty cannot be underestimated. The boss told the girl that he has not only a flute and should be prepared for a surprise. 2 assistant boss began to play on sonar. This is a long brass Chinese instrument. The girl realized that she could not surpass such a loud sound of 2 musicians. The beauty was nervous and quit playing on her instrument. She thought that the game on it was a waste of time. The liner staggered and almost fell. It's good that our hero appeared in time, who grabbed her in his arms and asked what was happening here. He only lay down, and here they arranged a concert. The leader raised his hand up and his assistants stopped playing the instruments. The boss told the young man that if the guy does not cooperate with them, then they use sonar to send him to heaven. The boss of the robbers was so convincing, he told the young man that they had prepared even a coffin for him. The chief villain knew how to morally kill the enemy. One of the robbers suggested playing and dancing. So, when the boss played on a flute, his 2 assistants began to dance, holding a coffin on their shoulders. The young headman began to dance himself, and the girl also began to move to the beat of music. Su Xinyao did not understand what was happening. He said what kind of music it was and why he could not stop. The beauty explained that this is called a dance with a coffin. This is an enemy sound attack, and if he cannot stop, then he will be so excited that he will jump into the coffin to commit suicide. The guy under the influence of a musical attack continued to dance. The intention of the enemy reached him. The young man said that the music is seriously very powerful. The young man had a desire to really lie down in the coffin to relax. Everyone continued to dance, but real danger threatened only a young man. The villains continued to play. One of the robbers told the headman, or he managed to think about cooperation with them, otherwise it may be too late. Su Xinyao began to think about the plan of salvation, because not the 8th Symphony of Tchaikovsky sounded, "You need to come up with something and break out of the musical trap." Suddenly the guy saw a lute, a Chinese string instrument on which the girl played before that. He lifted her. He looked at the instrument and saw that 2 strings needed to configure. The young man quickly set up the instrument, gave it to Van Lutze, and asked her to play. The girl understood the idea of the hero, to resist the enemy with the help of music. She played on the lute. The boss of the robbers played without stopping. But he realized that he could no longer completely affect the situation. The leader thought why the girl's rhythm is the same as his. He was very tired and the drops of sweat flowed down his cheeks. Their musical duel continued. The waves emanating from the musical instruments of opponents resisted each other. The boss of the bandits did not understand what was happening with his instrument. Hands stopped obeying him. Suddenly, the girl and our hero saw how a big explosion occurred at the place where 3 robbers stood with a coffin. There were fire clubs and people almost burned in it alive. Su Xinyu joyfully said that they won a musical attack. Van Lutze was pleased with herself. She stood and hugged her instrument that helped defeat the villains. The young man felt something unusual, as if his aura, intensifying many times, began to activate his spiritual forces. The young man thought that the impact of the sound explosion mobilized the aura in him, and his whole body became stronger. The guy broke to the next level. He was so happy about it that he did not even want to catch up and punish the 3 robbers who were very hot and fire but were still alive. The villains examined each other since their appearance was deplorable. The boss did not believe that now he looked so ugly. The leader of the gang still did not understand how the young man guessed to change 2 strings, and the girl was able to defeat him. The villains had no choice but to escape. The 3 of them rushed to run away from there. The surprised Van Lutzy also did not understand how the instrument became so powerful, because before that she played on it, and he was weaker. The guy showed 2 fingers and replied that he had just set up 2 strings. He was pleased with himself, since then it was the only correct decision in this situation. The young man said that the robber's tool had his own limit, so he tuned the lute so that its frequency of sound waves coincides with the frequency of the sounds of the enemy instrument. The inventor continued that the resonance that had arisen was so great that it exceeded the permissible level of the 0, and it collapsed, exploding. The girl said that she did not understand anything, but still glad. In his room, when the guy was left alone, he sat down at the table. Looking at the ring, the young man thought that now that he raised his level, whether he could pull out anything else. After activating the ring in front of a young man, some kind of fragment of something fell on the table. Su Tsin Yao touched this thing with his hand. She looked like a fragment of something and radiated a strange aura that diverged from the fragment. The young man thought and said that it might be a fragment of memory. At the same moment, it seemed to him that he remembered something. A man stood before his eyes who was wounded in his chest with sharp weapons, and his last words were that Io baby should forget all the hatred. Dad wants him to live happily and happily. Then the man who wounded this man quickly ran away. His cape developed in the wind, and someone shouted the word, "Dad!" The young man was still in his room. He did not understand where he got such a strange memory. 2 tears rolled down his cheeks. The young man took out several more items from the ring that could be useful to him in the Forbidden Zone. Dunmei appeared out of nowhere and soared over him, like a fairy, looking at objects. The guy squinted, looking at the ring. There were still some objects in the ring, but he could not get them yet. The girl said that these things would help him get into the Forbidden Zone. The young man said that he would be prepared more diligent. When the morning came and the sun rose above the small house where our hero lived, the owner's voice was heard in the house, so that Van Lutzy brought him a cup of tea. No one spoke. Then Su Tsin Yao stepped on the threshold of the house and looked at the lawn. There was only a cat who grunted. But the young man immediately realized that he said that a girl could be in the yard. Van Lutzy stood in the yard and said something in some object. She called Dad and asked or audible. The girl turned and saw the master. He asked what she was doing here. The beauty said that she could not contact his family and doesn't know how they are. The owner of the house said that the village is far away and surrounded by mountains, so it is difficult to contact. But then the master said that he has a good idea how to help a girl with this problem. The young inventor created something like an antenna. He hung several talismans for transmitting the signal and then strengthened it with spiritual energy. Then the girl will be able to send a message. The beauty admitted that this thing looks amazing. She asked what the invention is called. The guy replied that this was a signaling tower. The young man held in his hand a small rectangular item and said that this thing has such a form to take messages better. From a small rectangular object, the voice of Father Van Lutzy was heard. Dad called her gently, "Baby," and said, or she hears him. She answered him. At the same time, near the palace, where the princess's father lived, a strong lightning suddenly flashed and the sounds of thunder were heard. A strong thunderstorm began. The girl's father sat in a chair near the table and spoke into the phone. He heard that his daughter said that he would not be worried. She is now in the village of Dao Inn. He said that he was also missing her. Suddenly, lightning struck the sky. The connection was interrupted. The king shouted to the manager why he could not get a message. The servant bowed in a bow and said that it was because of a strong thunderstorm. The king began to get nervous and told the manager that there were no messages from his daughter for a long time, so he himself needs to go to the village to see everything well with his daughter. Van Lutzy could not contact her father, but was able to talk to her friend. She asked her what news recently. She said that he eats a lot of spiritual fruits so that her level increases. When the owner of the house entered the room, the girl listened to the message, and at the same time sweeping the floor with a panicle. The guy said that he needs to go to the Forbidden Lands and Van Lutzy should stay in the house. The girl said that he would not worry about everything. The cat was near the owner and jumped in his arms. The girl asked, or the young man takes Chow Tsai with her. The guy replied that this robber continues to pester him, so he would take him. After some time, a man stood at the gate of the house. He came from afar and looked around. He was a middle-aged, had a small beard, his hair was collected on the top of the head and stabbed. The gate was ajar, so the man, saying that his daughter was likely to be here, entered her. The guest entered a small courtyard, immediately shouted that he wanted to see his baby because Dad came to her. In his way stood the signaling tower invented by the owner of the house, which interested a man who came. The man looked at a high thing for a long time and did not understand what it was and why it serves. The father of the Princess Van Lutzi went into a small house and saw his daughter. He was glad of the meeting. The king sat down at the table. But first of all, he asked the girl when the owner of the house returns. The daughter answered her father that she was in perfect order here. But the king of the southern kingdom of Chen could not allow his baby to live with a stranger. He told her strictly about it. The guest firmly said that he would stay here and look at the person who made his daughter so devoted. King Chen was surprised at the inventions of the owner and his spiritual fruits and vegetables. He thought that the young man fascinated his daughter, which means he has a real talent. Meanwhile, our hero, along with his cat, who fled next to the owner, walked along the path through the forbidden lands. The young man examined the trees and flowers that had a luminous aura here. A large insect that has a long nose flew past the young man and his cat. It was so buzzing that it attracted the attention of Chow Tsai. The cat jumped up and caught a mosquito, clapping greatly with his paws. The young man sprayed himself with something and said that there are many mosquitoes, so he needs to use a liquid agent from them. Suddenly, Dunmai arose behind them. This time, she did not steam in the air like a fairy, but stood on the ground with her feet. She said that they need to rush, since in these lands time flows differently. The young man was delighted with the companion. He shouted her name and said that she materialized. The girl replied that there are a lot of aura in these secret lands, so she can be here in physical condition. Dunmai was very alarmed. She said that she constantly feels that something was calling her from here and it could be dangerous. The beauty decided to go forward to look around here. The young man began to worry about her, because now she materialized and could be threatened with a physical threat. The young man picked up his pet in his arms. He was so worried about Dunmai that he decided to let his cat go with her. The guy handed the beauty of a fluffy beast. The girl took the cat in her arms and doubted whether such a cute cat could protect her from demonic animals. Chow Tsai was a little puzzled because he serves the owner. Moreover, he thought that the girl somehow looked down at him and underestimates his abilities. But there was nothing to do, and a small animal ran ahead of the girl along the path leading deep into the secret forest. The girl told the guy in the end so that he was waiting for her here and would not go anywhere. The young man, left alone, took out a new little thing from his pocket for the campaign that he specially prepared, a flashlight. He said that, of course, he would not go anywhere and giggled, which Dunmai is naive. When the guy turned on the flashlight and looked around, he saw traces. It seems that this place is teeming with demonic beasts. The young man decided, why not catch one such beast and play with him? A good plan has ripened in his head. For its implementation, Su Jin Yao found a small forest lake with water lilies. He will let electricity into the water there and then lure the demonic animal into the pond so it will be easier to catch it. Our hero was pleased with himself, but he thought that still there was not enough bait. Suddenly, the guy saw a frog, having fun jumping into the water lily on the jug. The young man looked at the animal and said that he was very sorry and he guarantees that nothing bad would happen to him if he prompted the bait. The frog did not understand why he was, but there was no choice, and a minute later the frog was already sitting, tied to a thin thread, the end of which was in the hands of the young man. The guy thought that now we had to wait until the beast seems to be at the pond. What was the surprise of the boy when he soon heard a terrible noise from the forest? It was heard that someone big and strong runs along the path. Our hero, hiding behind a large stone, looked out because of him and told himself that someone was approaching. At the same instant, Su Jin Yao saw a huge white monster. The spiritual beast had a strong body, large paws and red eyes. He moved at frantic speed. A lot of people fled behind the monster who were armed with swords and long axes. The hunters shouted to prevent the beast from leaving. The young man didn't count on such a turn of events. Indeed, in his plan, such a case was not provided. He thought where people were still. After all, he thought that none of the people happen in the secret land. Suddenly, a white monster ran to the shore of the pond and directly hung in the air for a moment. Our hero was already delighted with this. Now he was thinking his plan to be realized and the beast would be in the water. But unexpectedly, the monster, having waved his wings, rose up instead of getting into the pond. For a moment, it seemed that the beast, feeling the danger in the water, decided to change everything. The young man cried out how the beast knows how to fly. But all the hunters who pursued the monster did not know how to fly. All of them with the run, without stopping, fell into the pond and received an electric blow. The young man shouted that there was danger, but it was too late. The bodies of people pierced the current, their hair rose up, they shouted for help. Our hero stopped the current of the current. Everyone was alive. Our hero approached people who had chosen ashore. There were 3 of them and said how they feel and that a mistake occurred. One of the guys said that they are students of the Bayman Academy and here for hunting. Another group of people approached the place where our hero stood. Their leader of the group, Lo-U, asked what they are doing here instead of catching demonic animals. At the sight of the boss, 3 hunters bowed in a bow. They all revered their boss very much. Suddenly, one of the hunters pointed a finger at our hero and said that he gave the demon to escape, applying his skills, and he specifically struck the hunters with lightning in the water to injure. The head of the group was young, his long hair was stabbed in a sticking tail. He was very angry and said Sutsin Yao how he dared to interfere with their hunt for a demonic beast. Our hero realized that the situation was complicated and we must settle everything peacefully. But one of the hunters whispered to him that Lo-U leader was very arrogant and powerful, so the young man should be careful. Sutsin Yao raised both hands and pointed with his palms so that everyone would calm down. He tried to smile and said that everything that happened only an accident. But the leader of the group considered that the one who prevented the hunt should be punished. Lo-U pulled out his long sword from the scabbard and said that I didn't want the culprit to leave without punishment. Behind him, 6 more people did the same, so there were 7 of them. They all surrounded the young man and sent their swords to him. The leader said that they listened to his team. Our hero stood in the center of the circle and thought that since they are here, then everyone has a high level approximately like he was, so they should have a harshly against them. The leader rushed with a sword on Sutsin Yao and shouted that he would apply the first position, an array, and kill the culprit. Our hero took out a pistol in the form of a pistol from his pocket and used it against the enemy. He said that it was not necessary to call the name of the technician when you attack. All 6 of the other warriors screamed that the captain was defeated, so it is necessary to surround the culprit together to not allow to escape. Our hero was calm. He told the opponents that he was not afraid of them, and at the same time, he will check how much the category is enough in the stun gun. Suddenly, there was a voice that said to stop everything. The stranger came from the forest with a group of people, illuminating his path with a flashlight. The master immediately bowed to the hero, welcoming him, and Sutsin Yao also greeted him in response. It was the instructor of the Lu Minuan Academy. He said that he was asking for forgiveness for his students. Our hero said that his name is Sutsin Yao, and he is the head of the village of Daoin. He thought, looking at the flashlight, which means there are still people who have passed here from the future. The headman asked the instructor what the subject was holding in his hands, pointing to the flashlight. The master Lu Minuan said that he knows that the object came from the circle of the sushi circle called. Our hero thought that he again hears about this person who came up with many things that were before in his past life. The master began to examine the stun gun in the hand of the headman. The instructor of the academy said that he saw how Sutsin Yao used a lightning attack and he has long studied electricity but never achieved success, so he wants to get advice from the headman. Our hero briefly told how the weapon acts when he enters the enemy and what is defeated by electric shock. The headman said that the stun gun does not kill people, but simply for a while he disables them. The instructor thought about what he saw. This invention was very interested in him. How quickly it worked against the leader Lo-U that he did not even have time to defend himself. Sutsin Yao's skills surprised him, and he thought, maybe this person hides his strength, so you need to accept Starum at the Bayman Academy. Suddenly, in the place where they stood, there was noise from above, from the sky. 2 young people. The headman of the village and the instructor raised their heads and looked at the sky. Su Yao asked what it was. Clouds of mosquitoes rushed into people. They were very large with long noses and red eyes. The headman shouted that these were huge mosquitoes. They were just clouds. These were mosquito animals. The master of Lu Minwen asked our hero to again show the power of his electric shocker. The young man took and activated the device, but it is not intended to kill many mosquitoes. Entire swarms of mosquitoes began to attack people. There were so many of them that they were everywhere. Even the master of the academy was frightened by their quantities, to say about the elder of the village, who said how many of them are here, that they closed the sky and the sun with a black cloud. The master told the students of the academy to take up a circular defense and not to panic. Everyone has prepared their swords. He thought mosquitoes are not a high level, but there are a lot of them. Su Yao was very scared, because he was not lucky with insects, of course. He thought that, like a hero, he needed to remain and fight. But for some reason, he wanted to just run away from here. The last thought that came to his mind was more rational. He thought what heroism life is more important for. Our hero rushed to run away, closing his ears with his own hands. He fled from there that there was strength. Other warriors became in defense and killed huge mosquitoes. Even the leader of Lo-O, whom the headman hit the electric shocker, was already in service. He turned around and looked at the runaway old. The warrior of the academy thought that the headman was not capable of serious acts. Su Yao quickly ran away and shouted loudly, "Away from me!" It seemed to him that mosquitoes would simply eat him alive now. Suddenly, the hero turned around, but there was not a single insect around him. The guy held out his hand to the lonely mosquito, who was still there, but he, having caught the smell emanating from the young man, flew away. Then the guy understood and smiled at all his teeth because he was sprayed with liquid from mosquitoes. This tool from insects still worked. The young man took the remedy and sprayed him to his body. Suddenly, the guy felt a strong wind blew from somewhere in the rocks that were not far. The headman proceeded there and saw that a strong wind escaped from a crack in a rock. Then, our hero decided to become near the crack, and the smell from his body will spread faster throughout the territory. Our hero did so. He stood near the crack in the rock, his hands widely spread, and the wind carried the smell of the means of mosquitoes throughout the forest clearing to where the warriors of the academy fought. The guys have exhausted strength. The master Lu Minwen waved his sword on the insect, but suddenly the mosquito turned and flew away from him. The instructor wondered what happened. Other students also shouted that mosquitoes flew away. All warriors felt some smell coming from the cliff. They turned around and saw our hero there. The master told them that this is the smell of the hero Su Yao. The young man thought he just wanted to run away, but again became a hero. His feelings were contradictory. The leader of Lo-O, whom the headman hit the electric shocker, said that this is a hero who first tried to run away. And this is just a coincidence that mosquitoes flew away, not the merit of the headman. Then another warrior who approached the leader said that he was just jealous of the master Su Yao, and if he also wants to become a hero, then let him catch up with Komarov and kill. The leader of the group picked up his bow and arrows in his hands and went to an open place. He told them all to see how he would destroy mosquitoes. Lo-O pulled on the bow. All students screamed that the leader uses heavenly onions with a sunset arrow. Everyone was waiting for whether a warrior could get rid of insects. The shooter released a fiery arrow in a mosquito cloud. He said that now mosquitoes will fly away. Everyone screamed that mosquitoes flew away. The master Lu Minwen said that Lo-O leader is really strong. The shooter said that not only Su Yao is a hero who is able to drive insects, but he too. The headman of the village thought that such loud statements of the leader of the group would not bring to good. A moment later, the sound of a strong noise came, which walked from above and with every second became louder and louder. Our hero asked what kind of sound it was. The first to happen was the leader of Lo-O, since he stood in front. He shouted that this was flying the queen of mosquitoes. The leader of the mosquitoes was huge. The guy is what is all over. Our hero thought that the arrow of the leader of the group not only did not kill Komarov, but also brought their queen here. The leader sat on the ground near people. The leader of the group, along with others, rushed off. The master Lu Minwan and his guys took up defense and took out their swords and other weapons. The remedy for mosquitoes did not act on the queen since its level was much higher than that of the rest of the insects. The angry leader had such a huge sting that she could nail any human body. She attacked a group of people and master of the academy. All students fled. Only Su Xinyao rushed forward, spraying the remaining liquids directly into the eyes of the Kamarian queen. He risked very much, as he was very close near her sting. The liquid that the headman applied was affected by the insect. It slowly flew away from a man, but the forces left him. The Komarina queen gave her team to fly away from this place, since it was dangerous for them. She herself, very weakened, collapsed to the ground. All members of the academy shouted that Su Xinyao is a hero and he is amazing. There were several girls among them. The beauties surrounded our hero. They told him compliments and asked the guy if he had a girlfriend. One of the students of the academy asked what girls he likes. 3 students of the academy received the answer of Su Xinyao that he has no girlfriend. One of the beauties said that she did not even believe in it. The leader, Lo U, seeing that the hero was surrounded by attention, was angry. Academy students set up a camp in a clearing near the body of Komarina Queen. The headman decided to come closer to a huge insect to examine it. Inside, he found a demonic pill of a mosquito. Suddenly, the master of the academy approached Su Xinyao, sitting near the queen. He asked him why the headman was not sleeping. He replied that he was still early and went out to look for something useful. Lu Minwan looked at the demonic pill, which glowed in the night, and said that things like this were well absorbed what is needed for cultivation. Our hero put a pill in his bosom and asked the master, "Or he will not tell about the origin of this secret world, because the elder knew almost nothing about him." The master replied that this world is a secret kingdom of emptiness, where all types of demonic animals live. As soon as the world opens, people from all layers of society come here to study, hunt. Our hero, holding flashlights in his hands, suggested Lu Minyuan that he had several more lanterns and can give them to students that they are engaged in the search for treasures. The master took 4 flashlights from the guy and was surprised that the headman just gives out valuable things like a flashlight. He thanked him for the gifts. Our hero went to the tent, entered it, and said that it was too late to rest. Suddenly, he noticed a female figure inside the tent. This was one of the pupils of the academy. She called the name of the hero and said that she was scared, since there are many demonic animals, so she cannot fall asleep. Su Xinyao decided to joke about this. He spread his hands, showing long claws, and growled, and then cheerfully asked what she wanted to do then. The beauty rushed to the young man in a hug and asked, or she could stay here for the night. The guy was taken aback by such an offer. He repeated the question, "Stay at night?" At the same time, behind the tent, the leader of Lo Yu with his 2 guys hid. They listened to what was happening inside. The girl inside the tent praised the hero. The guys were in collusion. According to their plan, the girl should lure the hero, and then the Trinity must accuse the guy of harassment, and the girl will play the victim. Lo Yu quietly said that then, for the crime, they will hardly punish him. The girl inside the tent lay down on the sleeping bag herself and said that today she would sleep here and would never leave. She untied the belt of her blouse. Our hero thought that he needed to calm down, because now there is no Dunmei nearby, so he can relax. The young man even joked, saying that this time there is no water, so there is no need to take a bath. The girl, lying on a sleeping bag, asked, or he allows her to stay? He replied that yes, because to protect those in need. His calling, how he could let her sleep in fear of the demon. 3 guys were still behind the tent. Hearing the girl's words, the leader Lo Wu gave the team 2 of his guys to start the show. But as soon as the Trinity began to move to the entrance to the tent, unknown warriors put a sharp sword to the throat of each. Everyone received the team to be silent, as this is a robbery. The beauty in the tent was sitting nearby near Su Xinyao. She called her name Se Ruo and said that the guy would give her his hand. Although the young man did not want to do this, the girl still molested him. Se Ruo put her chest forward and said that her heart beat so much, but he did not want to touch. She tried to be even closer to the guy. The young man asked the guest, "Or you can." But still he remained in indecision. Suddenly, the girl herself grabbed his hand and put it to her chest while saying, Of course you can. Immediately after a moment, she held his hand on her chest and shouted loudly that Su Xinyo was pestering her. The guy was taken aback and asked her what she was screaming. Suddenly, many people burst into the tent. They all saw our hero holding his hand on the girl's chest. The rude, unfamiliar voice of thee said that he only wanted to rob and did not expect to see such a show. 3 guys were taken hostage by 3 robbers dressed in warm jackets and white fur hats. The girl shouted to Brother Lowa, "What's with him? Who are these people?" He said that these were robbers. The leader of the group stood. A robber stood behind him and held his sword at his neck. Lo U told the robbers that he had no treasures, but Su Xinyo has a lot of them, so grab it. The leader told the leader that he himself knows who is richer, since he has been engaged in this case for many years, and let Lo U not joke better with him. The boss was very angry and hit the leader's face with his fist. Lo U fell from a strong blow, and the gang boss put his leg on his head and said that he despises those who start such scenes. They are all losers. The girl, seeing the leader of the group on earth, began to cry, ask the bandits to be merciful, since she has nothing but her body. The leader said rudely to the beauty to fall off, as they rob only for the sake of money, not perverts. He looked at the girl lying on the ground. 2 robbers approached the young man. He thought that since they have students hostage, then we must wait for what will happen next and where the master of the academy and the rest of his guys. Our hero left the tent and told the bold robber, who was their leader, that the camp belongs to the Beimin Academy, and this school is one of the most prestigious schools in the world. Suddenly, Su Xinyao saw that the master of the Lu Minwan Academy and other students were taken hostage by bandits. The master shouted to the headman that he had already told the robbers who they were, but it was useless. The leader folded his hands in front of himself and said that he did not recognize the academies at all, since they were divorced a lot, a bunch of losers who cannot fight in front of him. All students were kneeling or lay on the ground. Lo U told boss bandits that there is a great hero among them who will overdo them all. The main robber was very angry. He grabbed the leader of the group by the chest and shouted to call the name of the hero, and he personally crush him. Lo U, who has long wanted to get even with our hero for everything, finally could do it. He screamed, pointing to the older, that the hero's name is Su Xinyu, and he defeated the Roy of demonic mosquitoes. All students screamed, pointing to the young man, that he was a great hero. The leader of the group said that he would deal with all the robbers. The leader looked at the young man and thought that he looked like a child. Looked quite usually, but maybe the hero pretends to attack suddenly later. Su Xinyao shouted to the boss of the bandits so that he would not believe the guys. The headman was scared and thought why he was again. Suddenly, the master of Lu Minyuan, who along with others was kneeling, said that the hero would not succumb to the bandits because he should be guarded by justice and protect the dignity of the world. The boss of the villains rushed with the sword directly to the young elder and said that he was a great hero, not hesitate, and they will begin a performance. Our hero told boss robbers that he was not given a chance to even give up. He was without weapons and simply stood and waited for the boss of the bandits to do next. Suddenly, the leader waved his sword at the hero and said that he would not restrain himself. All students who kneel with tied hands, among whom were girls, screamed so that the hero was careful. Only the leader of the Lo-O group, who continued to lie on the ground, was glad about what was happening and said that the insignificant hero played out. Suddenly, where our hero and the boss of the robbers stood, there was a sound. It was Su Xinyao who wanted to strike with a sword and stumbled upon a guy's stun gun power. The young man thought that the lack of abilities is compensated by devices and a metal blade. This is an excellent conductor of electricity. All students and masters shouted that the hero is well done and always wins. One of the guys said that the stun gun is like an ace in the sleeve. But for some reason, the boss of the robbers still continued to just stand. Electricity did not work on him. The leader asked the young man what a thing was. What was so buzzing? Since the sword handle was wooden, the electricity did not affect the body of the robber, and it remained unharmed. In the next instant, the evil robber struck with his sword, and our hero seems to hit himself with the electric shock as his hand slipped and the electric discharge hit the body. The boss of the bandits shouted that if it is all that they are capable of, then it is time to finish. The master Lu Minwan was very worried about the hero, as it was clear that he was amazed and half sitting lay on the ground. The leader turned and told everyone to give their jewelry, since they are only robbers, they do not kill people. Hearing this, the leader of the group LOOYO shouted that even if they did not kill anyone, the hero would not leave it just like that and then destroy them all the same. Our hero realized that the leader was planning, by all means, to set the leader on him. A moment later, the boss of the robbers turned and went to Su Tsin Yao. He said that he would have to kill him. When the leader approached the young man, he looked at him carefully, and it seemed to him that he had already seen this face earlier. The guy pulled away from the villain as it smelled very badly from his mouth. The boss of the villains froze. He intensely recalled where he saw the face of a young man. This is an official photograph of LSP, which can belong only to the senior fan of the sushi circle. Then the thought overshadowed the leader of the robbers, because in front of him was LSP himself. So the leader thought. The main villain knelt before the young man, hugged him in one leg, and shouted that they were looking for him so much. All other robbers looked at their boss and did not know what to do. He screamed on them to kneel because it was LSP. Suddenly, all the robbers knelt in front of Su Tsin Yao. They all screamed that it was their fault. The leader of the villains told the young man that they were wrong and let him forgive them. The leader of the group LOOU, who was swollen from the blows of two cheeks, could not understand what was happening. He thought that now, it turned out, the hero was the boss of all the robbers. All students and master of the academy thought that the hero, it turns out, hid who he really was. They were still kneeling, and their hands were tied. Our hero was sitting in a chair, and the boss of the robbers was kneeling near him and tried to hug his leg all the time. The leader said that his name is Mao Hutzi, but he used to call him a hairy. The robber jumped up and began to take off his trousers and show red underpants, saying that this LSP gave them to his memory. The young man shouted to him to stop and did not suit the show here. Our hero was sitting in a chair, and the boss became next to him and asked how he is now evaluating his equipment. Our hero thought, since he is now a boss, then it's time to take his anger at Lo-U leader. Two robbers approached the leader of the group and showed fists. They rubbed them and kneed their hands. Lo-U, looking at two high enemies, prayed so that the hero would have mercy on him because he did not know what he was doing. The master of the academy, sitting in a chair, said that Lo-U dared to substitute a great hero. At these words, Lu Minuan pointed a finger at the deceiver. Lo-U's face was swollen from strokes with fists. He said that this was a misunderstanding, since, fearing demonic animals, the girl Siruo mistakenly entered the tent of the hero Sutsinyo and he defended her. Then the master of the academy asked the pupil of Siruo, or the leader of the group, tells the truth. The girl scaredly said that the hero really wanted to protect her and not seduce. Everyone realized that the accomplices of the leader of the group LOOU and Siruo are exposed. The master of the academy bowed in front of our hero and said that Su Tsin Yao was justified and Lo-U would be punished. The teacher did not understand how his students could come up with such a plan of deception. The great hero told the master that he still had nothing to lose, so let's give Mr. Lo-U the face and forget about it. The young man took the leader of the robbers by the hand and they quickly disappeared from this place. Mao Hutzi told the young man, or he is pleased that they punished Lo-U leader. But now the guy was more worried about something else. 2. Our hero and the bald boss of the robbers retired to the cave. The young man wanted to know about LSP. The guy said that he had problems with memories from the past and asked to tell everything he knew. The main robber Mao Hutzi thought how boss did not remember anything about himself because he is so wise, but he cannot remember who he is. Or maybe he tests something because his personality is secret. The bandit got up and said that he was afraid so that no one would eavesdrop on them, so he will go to the exit to see or there is no one there, and then he will return and tell everything. The leader went to the exit in the cave, and our hero remained sitting on a stone inside the cave. The young man thought, what kind of secret is the organization of the Circle of SUS Shy, and who is this LSP? Suddenly, at the entrance to the cave, there was a scream of Mao Hutzi. His voice was alarming. He shouted so that the boss came to him as the trouble happened. When the young man came to the place where the main robber stood, he saw a strange white fog near the earth itself. He said that there was just a lot of people where everyone disappeared. Malhutzi saw a strange white thread which was very strong. He told his boss about this. The head of the bandits held out his hand and pointed to the thread. Suddenly, a thread, like a living web, wrapped an inch over a man's hand, and someone pulled as strongly by the thread on the other side so that the body of the robber began to leave on the ground. Mao Hutzi shouted, "Boss, help!" The young man didn't understand what was happening. He wanted to consider where the thread dragged the robber, but the white fog covered the clearing. Suddenly, he heard the screams of students emanating from above. Su Tsin Yao raised his head, not believing his eyes, saw a huge web on which people hung in cocoons. They shouted so that the hero saved them. But he did not know how to save them, seeing this for the first time. Our hero took out a long knife and began to try to cut Putin's thread, but it was useless. The thread was strong. It can be seen some demonic insect weaved this web. Two students tried to cut the thread with a saw. Although they sawed, without stopping for several hours, the web of the web was not even damaged. The leader of the LOU group hung in a cocoon on a web among the rest. He told Su Tsin Yao to join them. "Will be a luxurious dinner for the spider." But the young elder was not up to jokes. He carefully looked at the web and thought what to do, even if a large saw did not help. Suddenly, one brilliant thought occurred to him to apply his invisible sword, who cuts the void. Dunmei taught him this technique. The young man activated the sword and applied a cut of emptiness. All people were free. They began to welcome the great hero. Only the leader of the group was the hall that Su Tsin Yu again came out to save them all. The hero told everyone that it became dangerous here and they all need to quickly leave here. The master of the Academy Lu Minyuan also said that it is necessary to leave. Suddenly, they all heard some sound, and Mao Hutzi shouted that it was already too late. Behind our hero, approaching him, a huge monster appeared. It was a black demonic spider. All the people who saw this monster were very scared. The boss of the robbers shouted that this was the demonic queen of spiders, the most evil species, which reached the kingdom of immortal. Everyone who stood there rushed to run away from the queen, but she had long legs and moved so quickly that she easily grabbed her first student with her paw. He shouted that the teacher saved him. The teacher turned to a cry and saw that a huge spider put a student in his mouth. Spray of blood sprayed in all directions when the monster squeezed the jaws. She ate a man. The teacher Lu Minyuan shouted that the demonic queen killed his student and he would not forgive her for this. The master took out his sword and rushed to the black spider. Other students shouted that they were with him. The teacher gave the command to use the technique of the sword of the Bayman Academy. Suddenly, a monster threw out a ball of threads. The threads enveloped all the people who attacked the demonic beast with one round cocoon. Our hero, running away, wanted to turn around, but Mao Hutzi pulled him away, saying that the queen of spiders did not spare anyone. The teacher of the academy, being in a cocoon, asked for forgiveness from his students. He said that he was too stupid because he brought them here. They said that it was the honor to die with him. The web squeezed people more and more. It was more difficult and difficult for them to breathe. Suddenly, our hero attacked the Black Queen, spraying directly into her mouth, the remnants of mosquitoes. Now the Queen of Spiders, leaving the cocoon with people, chased for a young man who specially distracted the monster into himself. The guy said Mao Hutzi to help the others while he distracts the beast. The boss of the robbers began to free students with the master from the cocoon. All the guys decided, having freed himself, that we needed to quickly help our hero. Su Tsin Yao ran to the lake and stopped, attracting the attention of the monster to himself. He screamed and waved his hands. The guy said that the spider would come closer to him and ate him. As we approached, our hero saw a huge size of the demonic beast. Her paws were very long, the body is thick with a green round egg in the middle. The young man bent down and the black spider flew into the lake with a run. She began to plunge into the water and the electric discharge pierced her body. Our hero was delighted when the body of a huge beast almost disappeared in the water. The young man said that the demonic queen of spiders is just a small spider in the face of technology. Suddenly, the animal appeared on the surface of the water again. Although the category of energy acted on it, the queen of the spiders was still alive. The guy did not count on it. He shouted that the spider was too strong. The demonic queen was approaching a young man. Sutsinyo had no longer a plan. He was in a panic. He turned around and began to run away as quickly as he could. Our hero fled, and in front of him, master, students and robbers stood in readiness. In their hands, they had baskets filled with yellow round objects. They shouted so that the hero ran to them. All people on command turned the baskets turned over, and round yellow balls flew out of them and flew towards the demonic queen of spiders. The master and students extended their hands, with the help of which, on the command of the teacher, they began to fill the balls of their TSI. The blue energy emanating from the palms of people revived balls, turning them into beetles. Our hero asked the teacher of the academy what kind of yellow bugs that are so powerful. He replied that the bright ladybugs are the smallest of the demonic animals, that for a while they will detain the spider. Our hero thought that this would give him time to come up with something because it was necessary to find her weak place in order to inflict a mortal blow. The young man carefully examined the animal from afar. High on his head, he saw something like thin holes for catching vibrations. This place was the least protected. Then the young man poured the remnants of mosquitoes in a wooden horn and threw him in that weak place on the head of the poorly that he noticed. The horn hit the target exactly, which means that the product hit inside. But not everyone understood what happened. Many students did not notice what the hero did. They did not understand why the spider fell, which now lay on the ground and barely breathed. Suddenly, the leader of the LOYU group appeared there with the sword, who said that no one was moving, and the time came to come out to a real hero to kill the animal. The bracket approached the green round ball, which was attached from above on the queen, and pierced it with a sword. Sutsin Yao shouted that the guy was going to do. But the leader did not listen to anyone. He shouted that he had killed the queen of spiders, and he, Lo Oyu, is a real hero. The guy decided, because he killed the monster, he should get his most valuable silk bag in the form of a trophy. Therefore, he pierced the green ball with his sword. The teacher, Lu Minuan, shouted so that Lo Oyu does not act recklessly. Our hero said that the beast temporarily unconscious and at any moment can come to life, mutating and turning into another creature. But the leader did not listen to the advice. He made a hole in the body of a demonic beast, even more to get a trophy. It was a bag of spider silk which had demonic power. But suddenly, the eyes of the monster lit up with red light, and he made a loud sound. The monster stood on long legs, dropping Lo-O, which fell to the ground right in front of the queen of spiders. The demonic beast was wounded and very angry. Our hero shouted that the queen of spiders mutated, so everyone needs to leave. There was a fright on the young man's face for the life of Lo-O leader since he was closest to the beast. The demonic animal began to radiate red waves of powerful energy. It has become many times more aggressive than before. The leader, sitting on the ground, shouted to the queen of spiders that he did not do everything, but the great hero Su Tsin-yu. At the same time, he pointed to our hero with a finger. Suddenly, the strong paw of the monster pierced the body of Lo-U and lifted up and then nailed to the ground. The leader shouted that he hates Su Tsin-yao. Our hero shouted loudly to everyone that we need to run away. All students and robbers rushed at all. But the demonic animal began to pursue precisely our hero. The young man thought that nevertheless the animal realized that he was to blame and wanted to kill him. Su Tsin-yao on the run remembered that on biology they explained to him that the spiders were not seen, so if he disperses his attack, the animal could not see it. The young man decided to apply the reception, a desk of emptiness, changing it a bit when he disperses the space or bifurcate it. The young man directed the energy rays to the body of the spider so that they affect different parts of the body. But the demonic mutated beast had protection from this technique. It was a protective red web, which was even stronger than a white web. The young man ended up in a red cocoon, from which only his head was sticking out. He could not move his body. The thread wrapped him up so tightly that it was not realistic to break it. It was an advanced version of spider silk, even stronger than the previous one, which could not be cut. Master with students and a devoted Mao Hutzi ran to the battlefield. They all shouted that they would help the hero and free him. But Su Tsin-yao said that he was already on the verge and could not be saved. The young man firmly decided that there was only one way out of the situation. He shouted so that everyone would scatter, and he, having gathered all his energy, will undermine himself when he would be in the mouth of a demonic beast. The guy thought to die in a similar way when saliva was dripping from the mouth of a spider. This is disgusting, but it would not be wasted. The hero thought so he would save other young people from this terrible demonic beast. The open mouth became closer and closer to the young man. Suddenly, a light ray compartment for a young man from a huge black monster, and he fell in a cocoon to the ground. This Dunmei did it. She came on time to save him. The young man was free from the threads of the cocoon. He screamed that Dunmei and the Chow Tsai cat were returning. The girl joked that she was disappointed that he could not win even a spider. The cat rushed into the hands of the owner and boasted that he had already moved to the kingdom of the immortals. Suddenly, the demonic animal stood on its feet. The girl stood back to him but felt his movement. She raised her palm and rays of light energy rushed right in the heart of the creature. The rays made a hole in the body of the monster so that through it became clear that it was located behind the monster. Then there was an explosion of the demon from the inside. Everything happened so instantly that few caught it. The body of a demonic animal lay in a pool of blood. The main robber said that, although he didn't even see a blow, it was amazing. Students could not understand what happened. Dunmei and Su Tsin Yao looked at each other without taking his eyes. The guy said she came on time. The girl was horrified how he could be so careless, because what would she do without him later? Everyone else looked steamed, opening their mouths. The master of the academy said that even the goddess loves the great hero so much. The main robber said that his boss is not a simple person, and his bride is too. Our hero began to move away from the rest. He shouted that he was leaving them. He needs to move on. He took a spider bag and said that the rest of the materials, they can divide each other. The devoted Mao Hutzi rushed to the hero at his feet. He grabbed his leg and hugged her. The leader of the robbers said that the boss was leaving him again, and he was so sad to see as he leaves. Su Tsin Yao was not comfortable, and he hastened to leave the girl and the cat. They walked along the forest path and held each other's hands. She was so beautiful, her light clothes developed. Dunmei told the guy that she found out how her real name is in Lin. The girl stood on the forest path. In her hair was white flowers, but it seemed now that the flowers have bloomed around her too. The beauty repeated her name, and the echo repeated it too. For some reason, it seemed to the young man so familiar. The girl began her story when they and the cat passed some distance. Suddenly, around it became so beautifully, flowers grew along the shores. She walked along the surface of the water in which white lotuses grew. The cat decided to jump into the water to get in a large water flower, a hidden object. But it was not so easy to do, since green plants with red teeth attacked Chow Tsai. These were Rafflesia. Evil plants clicked their mouths to bite someone. The cat remained unharmed. He quickly jumped out of the water, having managed to squeeze his tail. Dunmei with her hand created a protective aura from aggressive plants. Under the influence of its spiritual power, the plants of Rafflesia retreated. The beauty was able to go to a large flower, inside which some red object was hidden. Suddenly, the figure of a man arose there. He called her name, In Lin, and said that she was his daughter. Drops of water fell into her eye. It was like fragments of her memory. She walked towards a man with a white beard and a long tail on the crown and asked him, or he was her father. The man repeated her name again and said that she would not forget about her mission. The girl asked him what was her mission, but the man began to move away in the black starry sky from her. She called him Dad. Repeating this several times, but the black starry sky did not give an answer. After that, the girl felt something changed in her body. She said that her body became more material. The young man carefully listened to her story. Then, after she received part of the lost memories, the time of materialization of the body increased. The beauty said that she even remembered some of her previous martial arts skills, which means that her abilities are restored. The girl, following the hints from her fragments of memory, found a chest with treasures, which was previously hidden here. Inside the chest were a long sword, equipment, and a pill. In Lin gave the young man a green round pill. The guy tried her. She tasted very sour. Su Tsin Yao became bad. Foam went from the mouth. He thought it could be poison, but the girl reassured him. The beauty said that this is a normal reaction to improvement. The guy realized that his level rose again, and now he was already in the field of overflowing of spiritual energy. Suddenly, the young man's head fell ill, but it was some strange feeling, as if his memory was again open to him. He saw such a scene. In a large room, young people are sitting and drinking at the table. They laugh. One of them, raising a glass, honors the other. All of them are from the surroundings of sushi. 3 friends, but their faces are not visible clearly. A young man with a jade pendant shows a gun. The rest ask what it is. Our hero says that this is the first pistol he created. Although the weapon was created for the first time, it is very powerful to kill immortal animals at a distance. Friends shout that he is a genius. They consider him better than all the teachers of the Bayman Academy. One of the friends says that he is the best in the entire southern region. The memories were interrupted. The young man did not know what kind of scene that was so suddenly appearing from his memory. He thought that she had a weapon that could kill demonic animals. The girl looked at the frozen guy and asked, "Oh, he was fine." He replied that everything was fine. Some of his memories were just awakened. Suddenly, one by one, objects appeared that our hero once made a hairdryer, a toothbrush, and other little things. But among all, there were flags. This thing was called the Flag of Formation. At first, it is drawn and then filled with TSI energy to activate the formation. The girl said that you can try and practice how everything would work, so she offered to return. The young man said that they are not returning empty-handed. The young man decided to practice. His invisible sword made several circular movements. The beauty said that after improving the sword can reach 3 meters. After some time, our hero and his cat returned to a small house on the outskirts of the village, where the young man was an elder. As soon as the guy entered the goal, he shouted that he had returned. Van Lutzy ran out to meet him, but she was not alone, but with a man. She told the headman that it was her father. She introduced men. King Chen thought about the young man that he looks good, but his level of cultivation is only at the level of energy overflow. He asked what the academy he was, since you have many inventions. The young man said that he does not have a teacher, he has luck. The guy handed the girl a bag and said that he had a spider silk that he took from the murdered spider, which is used for strings. King Chen asked the young man, or he killed the demonic queen of spiders. But after all, the father knew that the queen of the spiders was much higher in level than the young man, which means that the man thought the guy was lying. The young man, holding the flag in his hand, told the girl that he would try to put a new flag of the formation that he made. Su Tsin Yao set the flag in the middle of the circle and began to charge it with energy. His sword made several circles around the flag, charging him. All this time, Van Lutzy's father carefully watched him. An experienced warrior watched how the power of the flag is changing. He thought how the young man was able to change the flag of the formation, so that the formation of 7 swords became as powerful as the flag of the immortal kingdom. Suddenly, King Chen decided that such a young man as Mr. Su Tsin is better to have in friends. Therefore, he offered the guy to go to study at the Bayman Academy. The man suggested that he would give recommendations to the guy. He will enter the same class as his daughter, because this academy is one of the best in the South. The girl's father knew that the pet's pet was a demonic beast. At the same moment, the young man recalled an excerpt from his visions, which he had recently saw. There was also about the Bayman Academy. Those 3 friends of the memories were probably her students. The young man thought that he had been in the village for so long that it was time to see the world. But if he leaves like the village, where he was appointed the head man. His girl from Kulin was also for them to go to this academy, since she thought this would help her quickly remember everything. The young man told the man that he was counting on him. The young man asked his father Van Lutzy to take care of the village, since he was her headman. The man said that he would not be worried. In his absence, there will be order. The young man decided to put things in order with the economy and go to the academy in 3 days, just at the beginning of classes. 3 days later, the young man Su Tsin Yao stood by the big bridge leading to the city of Linvu, where the Bayman Academy was located. The academy occupied a vast territory. Here, students were engaged with their pets who had a different level of cultivation. The young man was surprised at everything that was here. The young man twisted his head in all directions and examined everything. He told the girl Van Lutzy that the academy is more than the university where he once studied. But the girl didn't know what this word means. Suddenly, the teacher called out to the young people. He asked the young man, or he was the same student Su-Tsin Yao, who was recommended by the senior Van Chen. The guy answered the teacher of Chai Chu that he was he. The academy teacher looked at the young man appraisingly and thought that this was another major that entered the blat, and with the recommendations of King Chen himself would be accepted. Chai Chu told the young man to follow him. At least everyone who is recommended will be in Class A, but he must still check the guy's talent. The girl said Su-Tsin Yao that they would see later. There were 5 faculties at the academy. The Faculty of Manufacture of Artifacts, the Faculty of Alchemy, the Creation of the Suits, the Faculty of Taming of Animals, the Faculty of Studying Spells. The teacher led a new student and thought that he would not choose his Faculty of Alchemy, since he did not want to teach a fool. Therefore, he advised young men to choose the Faculty of Manufacturing Artifacts. The young man said that he would follow his advice and choose this faculty. The master was delighted and thought that Lin Lao would get a lot of headache. Chai Chu appeared in his hands a box, he opened it and handed it to the young man. The wise teacher said that the young man simply pick up the subject from the box and holds in his hands to determine his talent. There was something like a flashlight in the box. The guy took it and clamped it in his hand. A red beam immediately lit up, which rushed up to the sky. The teacher was surprised how this was possible. The guy had heavenly talent as the red color caught fire. Then the teacher immediately changed his opinion about the student and said that he could enter him at his Faculty of Alchemy, and he will provide the guy with all the best resources. Our hero said that he thanks the master for honor, but still thinks to enter the Faculty of Manufacturing Weapons. Chai Chu said that then he would take him to his Class A. A new student, giving the teacher a tester, asked that he showed a good talent test, but the wise man decided to get away from the answer. He said that he had just discovered that the device had broken and shows erroneous results, and he will test it next time. The master had a plan, not to tell anyone about the talents of the new one, and when the old students conclude him at this faculty, he will take him to him. He told the guy, if that, he always waits for him. In the class of the Faculty of Manufacturing Artifacts behind the department stood a young woman. The master Chai Chu entered with our hero to the classroom and said that he brought the brand new student Su-Tsin Yao. The young man greeted the teacher, Lin Lao. But the woman was very unfriendly. She said that he sat on his free place near the window and spit it to its origin. All the students looked at the new one with contempt. Each of the students thought that the guy acted thanks to the connections and was nothing of himself. The girl sitting ahead of the young man, Tan Eunlei, was the genius of manufacturing artifacts. She turned back to the brand new and said what level the talent tester showed, she hoped not black. The young man thought, because many in the class had silver, but there were students with a gold level. The guy said that the tester was broken. All other students, having heard the young man's answer, thought that garbage was sent to the class who could not even activate the tester. No one believed new. Everyone thought that he was deceiving. All students turned on to Su-Tsin Yao, and even the teacher thought that they were determined in the classroom without talent, she was to smoke him from the class. Tan Eunlei approached the new student and fell asleep with questions. She asked what his level of manufacture is and whether he would slow down their class. The young man said he thinks tall. The girl suggested making a small competition between him and her. She said if she loses the new one, she would fly out with Class A. He is not happy here. Everyone began to scream that he was garbage. Lin Lao teacher supported the student. She said that Tan Eunlei is a real genius, and if the young man can create something twice as powerful than she, then he will win. The master was very strict and added that if the new student does not do this, she would fail from their class, because they do not need panties. A student smiled at the teacher. Our hero was sitting at his desk. He had no choice but to agree. He said that, excellent, he is ready to compete. The Chai Chu teacher all this time eavesdropped on the conversation in the classroom as he was behind the door. He was so delighted with what was happening since everything went according to his plan. The older students pecked the new one. All students went to the workshop. Many boys and girls gathered there to look at the competition. In the middle of the workshop stood a table on which there were hammers, saws, roulette, pliers, and other tools. In the center near the table was a master on the sides of her, a girl and a young man. The student said, "Let the guy choose what he wants to do." The new one chose a crossbow. She said that he would not regret the choice later and began to work from her hands with a purple flame. Students began to talk among themselves. One said that her purple flame is so beautiful, it is fascinating. Another student specified that this is a diamond flame. They all wondered what fire was used by the new one. But our hero, until there was no flame, even black. All students were at a loss that the new one had no flame. The Lin Lao master stood and watched a new student. She knew that he was a loser, but did not think that he was so stupid and had no talent at all. She wanted to kill him. Our hero looked at others and asked what flame everyone was talking about, how to do it. Everyone was amazed that he did not know how to light his flame. They asked him that he was from the village. The young man proudly said that he was from the village in the mountains. The young man continued to make a crossbow as he can. He thought he would master the skill of flame later. Su Tsin Yao lifted up a crossbow made and said that his weapon with bolts was ready. Suddenly, the Lin Lao master grabbed a crossbow out of his hands. She turned into a hyena, fiery, and shouted what for shit he made, because with his level, he could make a third-level weapon. The young man was thrown into sweat. He never saw such reincarnations in women. It seemed to him that death itself had come for him, so Lin Lao had changed. The young man said that it was only a warm-up. The master said that she would give a young man another chance, but if he doesn't succeed, she herself will kill him, and she doesn't care who is behind him. The young man almost cried from these threats. At this time, Tanunlei has finished her work. She smiled, raised her crossbow high and asked the young man, or he did not change his mind to compete with her, or he could immediately admit his defeat. The genius of manufacturing artifacts, a young girl made a magic weapon of the 4th rank. The beauty again advanced in the craft, and at the competition surpassed her past results. The master said that she would no longer mock the young man, and if he breaks this shield with his crossbow, then she will consider this his victory. A new student told the teacher that she should not take risks and let him put a shield on the table and move away. At this time, he charged the crossbow in his hands with his spiritual energy. The girl took the shield from the teacher's hands and, putting it ahead of her, said that it was made of black iron. He is an artifact of the 4th level, and so that he would not boast, but shot if he was told. The guy said that then he would shoot now. He raised his charged crossbow and shot. The arrow of the crossbow pierced the shield and almost pierced the girl's body. It is good that the Lin Lao master managed to put the defense of the girl's body with her hand. The teacher screamed how he did it. The young man asked, or he won. He calmly lowered his weapon and smiled. Lin Lao thought about how a poorly made weapon could break through a 4th level shield. She told the new student that he won and let Sun Sain take him to the hostel for freshmen. Tan Unlei's student looked at the young man's crossbow, which he left in the workshop, and asked the teacher, or she does not know why this weapon is not even of the 1st level, she shoots so powerfully. The teacher said, picking up a broken shield, that she had not had such an interesting student for a long time. Su Tsin Yao obediently went with Sun Sain, which was supposed to take him to the hostel. They walked for a long time past multi-tiered buildings along a wide street. The guy who led our hero said that he would not talk, but knelt since Mr. Chi is coming. On a demonic animal, a gentleman with long red hair drove through the gate in the wall. Half of his face covered his bangs. It was a young master of the Red Sun clan, but our hero hesitated and stood, while all other people knelt down. Sun Sain told our hero that if he does not kneel, his legs will be broken. Our hero plunged into his memories. There was a man with a sword. His eyes were familiar to him. The young man thought where he had heard by the clan of the Red Sun, and the name of Mr. Chi Unlun seemed to be familiar to him. The honorary nobleman looked at Su Tsin Yu and thought who this guy was, that he did not want to bow to me. No one had previously seen this young man. The gentleman gave the team to his subordinates so that they broke the young men both legs. The warriors said they would execute the order. Our hero closed his eyes. He tried in vain to remember where he heard this formidable name, since the memory was not complete. But in the fragments of the guy's memory that seemed to him for a moment, this clan of the Red Sun destroyed his house and killed his father. The young man continued to stand when the soldiers of Mr. Cheon Lun surrounded him. One of them said, "Or he has already died, or waiting for them to break his legs." Another warrior said that there was enough conversation. Our hero prepared for battle. He activated his invisible sword. Suddenly, Van Lutzi's voice was heard. She said she finally found him. The girl approached Su Tsinyao, but did not understand what was happening. Suddenly, Mr. Cheon Lun gave his people a team to return to the secret kingdom. He said that he would figure it out later. The nobleman dismounted from his animal and, slightly bowing to Van Lutzi, said that he had not seen her for a long time, and she became more beautiful and more beautiful. The girl folded her hands in front of herself and said that the young Master Cheon Lun remained as powerful as before. The young nobleman said that Miss Van Lutzi misunderstood. It was just a small conflict that was not worth attention. He thought it was better not to quarrel with the daughter of the Lord. The young gentleman told all his people to return back to the secret kingdom. The nobleman sat on his animal and disappeared from sight. He wanted to quickly achieve forbidden lands. Our hero thought that this guy looks much stronger than him. He felt that the level of his cultivation was close to the Star Kingdom. After some time, Mr. Chi Unlun was already standing in front of the entrance to the secret kingdom, which guarded the guard with a sword. He did not miss anyone who wanted to go without printing. The gentleman showed the seal of the guard, and he gave him the right to enter. In the end, he shouted to his people that he no longer wanted to see that person when he would return. Who kill him will receive a reward. All subordinate nobles were delighted that they received such an important task, and each of them dreamed of reward. Each of them wanted to please his boss and kill Su Tsinyao. Among these warriors who served Mr. Cheon-lun, there was an old familiar young man leader, El-Lo Yu, who was merged by the hero when he fought with the Queen of Spiders. When the couple remained together, the girl Van Lutzi warned our hero that he should be careful with the young master, the youngest son of the head of the Red Sun clan, since he is a very chin. The young man promised that he would increase his level to the return of nobles. The young man remembered that this clan destroyed his house and killed his father. The girl told the young man that she thought he would choose her faculty of spells, and he chose another, but he could visit him if he wanted. Then the girl decided to introduce him to her best friend. A few minutes later, the young man and the girl approached the high multi-tier building. Their Van Lutzi friend should have been waiting for them. The building was named the Pavilion of the Secret Scripture. Suddenly, our hero felt a burning sensation of Kulon. He mentally asked the girl from the pendant in Lin, which was not so. She said that she feels on the upper floors of this building. There is what she is looking for. The young man asked Van Lutzi, or she knows how to get to the upper floors of the pavilion. The girl said that this is a very important place for the academy, so powerful people always guard him. The beauty continued that you can get there by fulfilling 2 conditions. The first student should be younger than 21 years old, and secondly, the student should be among the best 200 points. The guy replied that the age was not a problem, but to gain so many points and become a student from the list of heavenly pride of the academy, that is, number 1, it is very difficult. A few minutes later, they entered the pavilion. There was a girl from Class A, the Faculty of Manufacturing Artifacts, which was called Tan Un Lei. Van Lutzi introduced her to the master. Suddenly, Su Tsinyao saw his rival in today's class competition. He shouted to her, "Is you!" The girl Van Lutzi said at the sight of their reaction, which almost forgot, they are now in the same class. The old acquaintance of our hero praised him and said that he was a genius in the manufacture of artifacts, and together they would be a good couple in this craft. But a friend didn't listen to Van Lutzi and quickly said that Su Tsinyao is not a genius. He does not even have a flame, so at best he is a fraudster. She was convinced of her innocence. The young man, having calmly scratching the back of the head, asked Van Lutzi how the flame, which everyone was talking about, and how to manage it turns out. The old acquaintance explained to our hero that 2 conditions are needed to merge the flame. The first is the approval of the fiery spirit, and the second ability to resist it. Fire differs in color: black iron, bronze, silver, gold, diamond, and the highest level, divine. Tan Unlay had a diamond flame color. This is almost the highest level in the south. The guy asked his girlfriend how to use the flame specifically. She said that the spirits of fire are very difficult to find. The young man was angry that even if he could find the spirit, then there is no fiery merger in the entire academy. Our hero knew that this pill should be made using fire, but at the same time, it should not be mixed with an attribute of fire, so only a flame master can make it. Dun Mei, who was truly called in Lin, mentally conveyed all this knowledge to the guy. Su Xin Yao scratched his chin and thought that he himself could make a pill easily. Two girls at the same time, without saying a word, shouted how easy it is. They were so surprised by his boasting. Suddenly, 4 guys led by Lou leader entered the pavilion. All those present began to blame our hero that he's a liar. After all, even an experienced master of alchemy managed to make one of 100 pills to turn out to be of high quality. Our hero said that he does not want to deceive anyone, and if he has high-quality ingredients, he will make a fiery. The leader, Lo-O, began to knead his hands. He told the new student that he would beat him on behalf of Miss Tan Unlay. Suddenly, a student of class from Class A said that she wants to see how he would make a pill and she has all the necessary ingredients, but if he spends them wasted, then she will allow Lo-O to beat him. The young man agreed to the conditions of the girl. He thought how quickly the necessary materials were found. 2 hours later, in Class A, the Faculty of Manufacturing Artifacts, our hero brought a microwave oven. All students looked at her in surprise. She was not even like a stove. Tan Unlay, seeing a rectangular furnace, said that she would break it if nothing happens. Van Lutzi alone was worried about her friend. Everything worked out. Classmates in the classroom, everyone talked that none of them could make a fiery fusion pill. Even at the Faculty of Alchemy, this succeeded, and even then with many attempts. Our hero charged the microwave oven with his spiritual energy. He took the scales and measured the amount of ingredients in his opinion. Then the brand new student was cleaning some mixtures in a flask and received purple fluid. Su Tsenyao stood in front of a microwave oven with some kind of flask fluid. He thought that the spiritual heat from the waves would perfectly solve the problem of penetration of fire. At this time, the master of Chai Chu, who was in charge of the Faculty of Alchemy, went into Class AU. In his hands was a vessel closed by a cork. The teacher was thinking about a new student. At this time, there was a sound from the microwave. The timer turned off, and our hero told all those present that the time had come to become a witness to a miracle. On the tray lay a flask, inside which there was a dozen gold color of the pill. Everyone screamed as possible. Van Lutzi, Tan Unlay and Lo Oyu stood closest to the young man. They saw that the pill was really of the highest quality. A strong smell emanated from them. The alchemy teacher shouted, "What a surprise!" The young man asked mentally in Lin or these pills that he made really the highest quality. The girl from Kulon replied that he didn't even know that they are really the best. Then our hero handed one pill to the two Tan Unlay and Lo O. He asked, "Or they have something to say?" Lo Yu shouted that the color of the pill is really of the highest quality, but you need to test it. All classmates thought, because none of them saw a pill of diamond quality. A brand new student held in his hand one round gold, colored pill and said how to prove. Student Lo Wu shouted that Su Tsin Yao was buzzing and began to approach a new student with fists. Suddenly, the Chai Chu teacher approached the arguing students and said that Lo Wu fell silent. A teacher of alchemy said that students are ignorant because there are several degrees of light, a pill with such a golden color of a definite higher quality. Then all the students said that since the alchemy teacher himself confirmed that the highest quality pill, which means that it is. Everyone screamed that it was incredible. After the teacher's words, our hero realized that he had won a bet. He asked what Lo Wu would say to this, but he still did not want to put up with this and said that they had traveled. The guy hid the anger at Su Tsin Yao. Our hero handed the flask with pills to Tan Unlay and said that he wanted them to share pills because it was she who gave the ingredients. But the girl turned around and wanted to leave. She snorted and said that he would leave them to herself and she to learn how to make them herself. A student remembered that the guy used the stove. Van Lutzi shouted to her friend so that she would not leave, because together with Su Tsin Yao, they could make new artifacts and switch to the highest level. But her friend said she would not study with him. When the girl Tan Enlei left, the Chai Chu master smiled and told our hero that he wants to talk to him alone. The master and new student went outside. The teacher said that the young man would move to his faculty of alchemy. He knows that the guy needs to think, and in case of consent, he will give him the flame of the gold level, our hero thought. He remembered that the genius of Tan Enlei had a diamond flame, and the gold is lower than the level. Why then he had such garbage? Suddenly, behind the Chai Chu teacher, a figure of Lin Lao appeared, who, approaching them, said that she did not think that the old man would try to lure her student. The teacher of alchemy became inconvenient. He turned away and said that the students themselves are free to choose faculties for themselves, and he has a gold-level flame. Then, the new student told teachers that the fiery spirit of the gold level is garbage, and maybe they know where to get better. The master Lin Lao thought that the young man was a little stupid, so he needs to be tested. She said that she knew where to be the fiery spirit of a diamond, and even possible heavenly level. The teacher said that in the Valley of Broken Souls, 100 miles east of the city, a mysterious spirit lives. But in order to get it, he must sacrifice his spiritual strength. Lin Lao talked for a long time about the spirit of fire, and then asked him, putting his hand on his shoulder, or the guy understood everything. And she herself thought that there would be the one who puts his ass to the young man. The young man, having received all the instructions, went on a hike. He said mentally in Lin that they have to conquer the spirit of fire. A few hours later, he walked east of the city among forests and rivers. It was a valley of broken souls. The young man walked along a narrow forest path among centenary trees when he noticed surveillance. The girl from Cologne and Lin told him, flutting like a fairy around him, that Lo O with the guys pursues him everywhere. The young man said he knew about it. Su Tsin Yao approached a tree with red leaves. He thought that his pursuer here was also somewhere nearby. Suddenly, the guy Lo U appeared behind him. He shouted that Su Tsin Yu did not expect him to see him here, and this time there are only two of them. Our hero told the leader of the group that he had a short memory and he forgot everything that happened in a secret kingdom. This time, the guy Lo U prepared for the fight. He said that he took with him the most valuable treasure of his family of the Kingdom of Immortal, the golden wheel to deal with him. Su Tsin Yao mentally asked in Lin, or this weapon is really powerful. The girl from Kulon replied that it was just a silver-level garbage. Lo Ou began the attack, jumping high and activating the magic wheel. He shouted, "Direct!" Our hero decided in response to try the technique of In Lin from the Secret Kingdom. This is a ghostly step when his body seemed at the same time in 3 places at once. His movements were so fast. The leader Lo Ou tried to manage his weapons, but the farther the golden wheel was from him, the more difficult it was for him to control him. Suddenly, running Su Tsin Yao stopped. The enemy thought that he had a spiritual power. Lo Ou prepared for the last final attack. He shouted so that Su Tsin Yao would roll into hell. But our hero activated his sword and cut the golden wheel in half. The young man Lo Ou shouted to the enemy why he ran away from him if he has such a powerful sword. Our hero said that he wanted to lure him inside the zone where the system was activated. The enemy stood in a whirlwind of blue energy. The pillar of spiritual energy rose from the guy Lo Ou up, taking his spiritual power from him. Then the guy realized that Su Tsin Yao specially lured him to this place. The red portal began to open. Lo Ou remained on Earth unconscious. Our hero said that the first stage is finished. In Lin smiled as her friend allowed the pursuer to become a victim to open the portal. Su Tsin Yao went to the portal and finally told the guy Lo Ou that he had come to his senses so that he would not molest him anymore. Having overcome the portal, our hero fell into the desert, where do not look, there were sands and the scorching sun. The young man became very hot. He did not know where to go, where to be a fiery lake. Mentally, the girl from the pendant in Lin said that she thinks the lake right in front of him. Suddenly, the guy turned and shouted that no. Behind him was a fiery beast. A moment later, a huge fiery beast fled to our hero. His body was burning with a flame. The monster's mouth was widely open. A flame was knocked out from under his feet. It's good that the young man managed to put the defense, otherwise the monster would incinerate him. Lin told him quickly to run away, as this is a red, fiery beast, which is very evil and cruel. Our hero hid behind the stones that stood nearby. The guy noticed that the beast had no eye. He thought about how he determines where the victim, maybe they feel warm from the body. The beast began to approach the stones, behind which the young man hid. The guy decided to use the talisman of the ice sword. Our hero created an ice plate and himself, jumping over it, ran away from the fiery beast, which attacked the plate since its temperature was lower. Lin said that the closer to the lake, the more fiery animals. She could not allow him to take this risk and suggested material about herself. The young man remembered how the girl from the pendant last time acquired the body and almost died. He did not want this again. The young man told the girl that he couldn't risk her. He firmly decided that he himself could deceive the fiery animals. Our hero firmly told his friend so that she would not be worried, he has a solution. There were many animals on the shore of the lake that guarded it. The young man, hiding behind a large stone, created a whole brood of yellow ducks. The girl from Kulon, fluttering above him, asked what he was planning to cook. The guy, taking one of the ducks, said that he wanted to apply an ice talisman on each of them. Then the girl understood the idea of the young man. She said that this is a good idea to distract fiery monsters. All ducks were charged with cold. The guy began to make noise so that they scatter and shouted that now everything depends on them. After a few moments, all the fiery animals chased at the ducks. The guy, delightedly, said that the fiery beasts liked his toys. While the animals were occupied by birds, our hero himself flew to the fire of the lake over stones and sands. He landed on a flat stone that towered above the lake with a girl who was soaring nearby. This lake was from a fiery lava. In the middle of it was a fiery flower of lotus. Our hero, seeing all this, was very puzzled. He stood on the edge of the lake, and the temperature no longer allowed him to breathe how to reach the middle of the lake. Lin was also saddened. She said that the teacher knew that this was a difficult task, so she did not come here herself. The young man did not lose heart. He said that since they are here, they should try. The guy, using the talisman, lowered his temperature as soon as he could. The girl was worried that this was not enough to reach the middle of the lake. The young man had one more device, something like a turntable with blades above his head, which would help him fly faster. The young man flew. The blades spun at maximum speed, but this movement was not enough to overcome such a distance. The guy felt a strong heat. His clothes below seemed to begin to ignite. He had to land on the shore. The girl flew up to him and asked, or he was fine. Our hero sadly said that the plan A failed. The girl, pointing to the lake, said he looked there. The young man glanced and saw on the surface of the lake the wide leaves of the water lilies, which were huge and were located so that they could reach a large lotus flower. Above the flower, the spirit of the flame of a diamond level flew. It was a fiery ball with a fiery tail. The guy asked the girl that this was a diamond level. She replied that yes, it was a diamond, since he's invisible and shapeless. Then the young man thought that he could take the form of the will of the owner. Since the road from the leaves of huge water lilies was laid, our hero, using the ice talisman, ran along the leaves. The girl from the pendant was very worried about him. She told him the trail to wait, because it was a hellish fiery lotus, but he no longer listened to her. The young man fled, but on one wide plant his leg slipped down. He was seized with heat. The young man sat down on one knee on the leaf of the water lily. The temperature around was unbearable. A risky idea occurred to him. He bit his thumb and smeared his chest with blood. Lin shouted to him that he had gone crazy. By this, our hero showed that he uses his body as a talisman. The girl screamed so that he wouldn't do this because he would die. The young man said that he has no other choice. The guy said that he activated the icy appearance. His right hand was all overlapped. He simply didn't feel it from this. Our hero began to move slowly to the flower. His legs did not obey him. His hand simply did not feel because of the cold in it. The young man was in front of the lotus flower, but he had the strength to even rise to reach out to the flower and pick up the diamond spirit. The young man was not able to open his eyes. Finally, he opened them and saw that he was in the middle of the green forest and next to him Lin. The guy got up and asked, or he was still alive. The girl said that he went through the test and received a fiery spirit. He was delighted and jumped up. He said that he had finally got him. Su Tsen Yao held out his hand and looked at the palm of his hand. A ball of fire appeared in the air above the palm, but he felt the heat and shouted that it was very hot. He could not concentrate. The young man asked the beauty why the fire burns him. The girl said, "Because the last stage of sacrifice remained, only offering that he is closest to his heart, he will be able to control him." The young man looked at Lin and said that she, the girl from Kulon, is closest to his heart. Thinking a little, the young man decided to joke that he needed to think here to get such a powerful spirit of flame, he would sacrifice everything that he likes. Suddenly, the guy's words hung in the air. "That's just..." The young man remembered that there was an agreement between them. Suddenly, the girl changed her appearance. She became transparent. He screamed what was happening. He didn't choose her. The girl from the pendant looked at him. Her image disappeared before his eyes. She quietly said that, so she chose him. On his outstretched arm arose a fire, level fire, but he no longer burned it. All the same, next to the fire, he saw her. The girl asked, "Or now does not hurt?" Then the guy realized that this could be in one case when in Lin is the spirit of flame. Giving away, in the form of a donation, she appeared in the appearance of the spirit of fire. The young man remembered everything that happened in the desert and thought, that means that it was all like a hallucination or a dream. After all, now a young man can incinerate the most terrible fiery beast simply with his fire, emanating from the palm of his hand. Our hero was glad that he had gained such a powerful gift, thanks to, of course, his girl from the pendant. After some time, the young man returned to the academy. This happened late in the evening, when a large moon rose above the city. The guy thought that we had to take a shower and go to bed. He passed by the pavilion building when he saw that someone was jumping on the roof. The young man thought that it was someone who was engaged in practitioners, or maybe it is a thief, while the black figure was on the roof of the school. Then a man, dressed in all black, jumped onto the building where the Holy Scriptures were stored. A new student decided to see what would happen next. The guy made his way to the gate. Dressing a black mask, he looked at the entrance. 2 guards did not notice anything. Our hero, hiding behind the wall, threw a pebble to attract their attention. The guards noticed a thief. The guard screamed so that everyone was caught a thief. But the black figure jumping down began to run away. A new student decided to take advantage of the moment and penetrated through the open door. But the protective field worked at the door and our hero could not move. The guards said that there was another thief on the ground floor. They rushed to the guy shouting to give up. Suddenly for them, our hero overcame the security spell and attacked them with his fire. The guards fell, and our hero, jumping over them, already fled up the steps. Lin mentally told the guy that it was necessary to get out of here. Su Tsen Yao, evaluating the situation, thought that the road was closed through the gate. He had to make his way deep into it. A guard with a sword pursued him from behind. A new student used a ghostly step and flew over the guard, making a somersault in the air. Just then the sword whistled below him. The guy landed and only thought that he had an improvement in technology. I heard something rustled from behind. These were arrows that flew just near his head and stuck into the wall nearby. 3 archers shot at the thief. They stood near the gate at the entrance. The young man had nothing left but to go upstairs. It was the only way out. The young man ran up the stairs. Applying a blow to the guard's head, he climbed the floor above. Emu had to destroy the stairs to get at least a little time. The guy had to be careful because it is likely that the thief was still here. There were many shelves with books in the old library, among which the thief could hide. Suddenly, a black figure of the thief arose behind our hero. He attacked Su Tsen Yao, but the young man was ready for battle. The enemy's sword hit a frying pan, which our hero prudently put up. Then the guy decided to attack himself with the help of his crossbow, which he improved a little. The arrow hit the sword right and tore it in half. The enemy was surprised what a powerful weapon. The young man said that he remade him, making it explosive. The thief, climbing the shelves with books, began to jump on them. The enemy moved very quickly. On his clothes on the side, Su Tsen Yao noticed a round talisman. It was a sign. On a white background, a black skull was depicted. Our hero ended with a crossbow. Then the thief, seeing this, turned around and attacked Su Tsen Yao. But the young man was not at a loss. He said that he still had something in store, and he sent a flashlight to the thief. A ray of light blinded the thief. But the flashlight was also a stamper. The thief was under the influence of electric current and fell. Our hero said that first we need to see who this thief is. He crouched over the thief and wanted to remove the bandage. He only wanted to say who he saw, how everything was darkened in his eyes. A black figure, similar to a female image, is the last thing our hero saw before losing consciousness. After a few moments, he woke up but was without outerwear, without a mask, among scattered books in the library. Lin barely woke him up. She said that the thief wants to substitute him and they need to rush to get out of here. Students ran into the library. Someone recognized Su Tsinyao and said that this is not the student who won the competition from the manufacture of artifacts. Our hero had a spray can, who shook and opened to spray the smoke curtain, and he could hide. Coastal smoke filled the whole room. The young man ran to the exit. He was almost at the exit. Suddenly I felt that something was wrong with the girl from the pendant. She said that nothing can do anything with herself and the memories enter her mind. The girl remembered that she was once a student of this academy. She came to the library and entered the secret room. The girl went to the wall and began to remember further where exactly was the door to the secret room. The young man said that there was a wall here, but the girl did not listen to him. Then Lin told the young man that he should hit the wall in this place. The voices of students who were looking for a thief were getting closer. Suddenly, having done as the girl said, our hero was in the dark, the light disappeared. He found himself in a small room. There, the beauty said that she saw this thing somewhere, pointing to a small voice recorder that lay on a stand in the form of waves. The guy took the recorder in his hands and said that this thing is called a recorder that preserves sounds and speech. He turned it on. From the device he sounded, the girl's voice, she said that she was Lin. Then she talked about important things. The recorder reproduced locusts, ghosts, dinosaurs, drowsiness, penicillin, historical insults. The girl said that this is really her voice, but she does not know the meaning of words. The young man thought that only he would understand the words dinosaurs and penicillin, but what they mean. Behind the wall, the sounds of guards and students were heard. They were given a command to search every corner. The young man whispered that they should get out of here. Probably there is a mechanism. The beauty said that by moving the stone lion, there will appear a secret passage. The room was not safe. The young man decided to take something from here, 2 books. Then he, moving the lion, opened the secret passage through which he got out. The next day, when the sun rose above the multi-tiered pavilion, many students noticed a photo of the criminal of the thief, Su Tsinyao, on the board of ads. Van Lutzi was most upset, which exclaimed that this could not be. Tan Unlei, who was standing near her friend, said that she guessed that the Nu was not a good guy. The king's daughter said that there was some kind of misunderstanding. She was saddened that no one believes that her friend is a good person. The old teacher, the master of Chai Chu, looked at the ad and said what it means that the guards saw his face. One guy said that the Lin Lao master herself applied for his capture. The alchemy teacher said how good that the guy is not in his class, otherwise he would not be lucky. All morning and night, our hero ran away from the guards pursuing him. Now he was in a dense forest. He was very tired, since almost 2 days had not eaten anything and spent a lot of effort. There was still an academy in the forest, where there were many places sealed with spells. Even behind the trees, the pursuers were visible. Our hero made a smoke curtain. At first, people thought that it was fog, but then they realized that smoke. The guards were hard to breathe. Nothing was visible. They began to cough and choke. People said that they needed to turn back and stop the search. The commander gave the command to retreat. Suddenly, the Lin Lao master appeared there. She was surrounded by a violet aura. In her hand was a small fan. She screamed on the guards how stupid they are that they could not even cope with the boy. The teacher shouted that smoke was walking in the wind, so you need to look for it in the wind too. She showed them her fan and said that she would clear the road to the guards. The young man thought that smoke would not only cover him, but also force them to retreat. While he was sitting in a cave, then he wanted to go down a cliff in a helicopter. The guy opened a book taken in a secret room and began to read. After a while, he heard that the guards were close. Suddenly, there were shots from the crossbow and the guards fell dead near the entrance to the cave. This master Lin Lao killed them from the young man's weapons. The teacher said that now he is not only a thief but also a killer. The guy said she was an accomplice of a real thief. She said that he was not stupid, but he would not have the opportunity to tell about it. The master of Lin Lao began to wave his fan strongly so that a whirlwind formed there, which lifted the body of the young man up. As he did not resist the wind, he could not control anything. Lin prompted the young man to use the dragon technique. The guy remembered 2 lines that he had read and realized how to act with both hands erupting the dragon's breath. Su Xinyao released a strong flurry of fire. The master, defending the sphere of a protective aura, said that he really got the spirit of flame. The guy said that he should thank her for this. In the place where the Lin Lao master stood, there was a black mark from her body. At the entrance to the cave lay several killed guards. Suddenly, there was a cry of other guards who only came. All people began to scream that Su Xinyu killed the mistress and guards. The young man had no choice but to hide. After some time, the whole academy already knew that Su Xinyao stole treasures from the academy, killed his teacher, and now be on the run. A reward is announced to the one who caught the criminal. The girl Van Lutzi was most upset after it became known that her friend had killed her teacher. 30,000 for the capture of the criminal, it was a huge amount of money. A man in a long robe came to the hotel where the room was booked. When our hero entered the room, he saw Van Lutzi, who was sitting at the table. Van Lutzi said that as soon as she found out about everything that happened, she immediately wrote to him. The young man said that he was also worried about her. Suddenly, something flew to the young man. There was a cry, "Direct!" It was a cat, a favorite of a hero. He jumped on top of the owner and wanted to scratch his eyes due to the fact that he abandoned him at the academy. The cat spoke about his problems of life without a young man and then asked, or the owner of someone was killed. Van Lutzi also wanted to know what was happening. The guy put a white sheet on the table on which the emblem was drawn, a black skull. He asked the girl, or she had seen this sign before. The beauty carefully looked at the emblem and said that she had heard about this organization from her father. This is a symbol of a well-known intelligence organization entitled Ghost. She was engaged in the fact that for a large fee, she could have implemented in any sect or organization to collect information. Our hero said that if the Lin Lao master was a member of the organization, she had to have this sign. But when he examined the place where she died, there was nothing there. It was not she. The young man, thinking deeply, said Van Lutzi that then Miss Lin Lao did not die because of the flurry of my fire. I could not see her action. The beauty said that she did not expect, because it turns out that the master of the academy was an agent under the cover of this organization. The girl did not know now what to believe. All thoughts were confused in her head. The guy rushed to her and took her hand. He said that he needed to find a ghost to clear his name. He asked the king's daughter, but she said that her father forbade her to intervene. The young man still said that he was grateful that the girl helps him. He said, or whether she heard the words locust, dinosaur, drowsiness, penicillin, and historical insults. The girl said that she knows the word locust. These are insects destroying all crops of crop. Our hero said that words can be code, sized with a secret meaning. Then the girl thought and remembered something and wanted to say. Suddenly, the door in the hotel room was knocked out. This girl, Tan Unlei, hit her foot and knocked out the door. She screamed so that the young man would not dare to harm her friend Van Lutzi. The young man said that he would never harm Van Lutzi. The genius student wanted to attach herself to the young man, but the king's daughter told her that Su Xinyu herself called. Tan Unlei grabbed her friend's hands and said that they had announced a reward of 30,000 for the capture of the criminal and everyone was hunting for him. The young man heard the girl from the pendant that the danger was approaching. The young man saw how 3 strangers follow him. The devoted cat said that the owner would allow the guests to meet him. The girls continued to quarrel. Van Lutzi said that Su Xinyu wants to help, but her friend said that he was dangerous. Then the young man, folding his hands in front of himself, said that he was not asking anyone to die for him and decided to surrender himself. 2 girls froze in amazement. They shouted out, "What?" The soldiers already surrounded the hotel. 3 at the entrance stood. The young man was very happy and told the girls that since such a large reward was announced, it would not only not kill, but will help me. The main thing is to use it correctly. Our hero left the room and went to the general hall of the hotel. He stood on the second floor and announced loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, are you looking for me to Mr. Sutsinyo?"